Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 187. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Cy and I read the same materials, so says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh? Now, you know what? I'm not going to fault anyone on their choices in reading material, but no.
Jim Smash! The rampaging Segulin.
Feel my Red Lantern rage right now.
There you go. Jim, on this episode, we're going to be talking about Preacher issues 5, 6, and 7. That actually is a great suggestion on your part because the New York art is very contained there. We will wrap up in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on what our next Speeding Bullets episode looks like, if we're going to do that in 2 parts or 1, because we want to really take a look at what's going on in the DC Universe. We also kick off this episode with a special look at, it's a very quick Speeding Bullets style look at Blackest Night number 5, and the events that happened in Batman and Robin number 6. We talk casually about them. We're going to do more in-depth cover-to-cover of those particular events in our next Blackest Night episode. But we couldn't help but talk about just the crazy things that happened towards the end of issue 5 and the implications, which we had to talk about Batman and Robin number 6, too, as a frame of context. And I won't say anything more about that. If you haven't read those issues, that's going to be what the show kicks off with. So you might want to read those before you join in on this discussion. We will have Myron back, though, and we'll have a big, in-depth discussion about it later. We also talked at the end of the episode about Vigilante number 11, which is our Vigilante Challenge issue of the former monthly series Vigilante that we both loved. Where'd it go?
I don't know.
I don't know if we're just doing any more of these Raging Bullet challenges because I think it's a kiss of death.
Right now there are creators saying, don't do a challenge on my title, please.
No, we did this to Manhunter, too. I only hope that, like Manhunter, this comes back as a backup. But not only do we have that, but Batman the Widening Gyre issues 2 and 3 that we're discussing as well. So just kind of a fun little episode where we take a look at a whole bunch of things. And we'll wrap up the last 5 issues of Preacher in our last segment with that when we do that in a couple weeks. So excited. Want to remind everyone that we remain proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. We're also on Get Your Geek On Radio, GetYourGeekOnRadio.com, an online radio station committed to making geek chic, and that's GetYourGeekOnRadio.com. Want to remind everyone to support the Hero Initiative. That's heroinitiative.org for more information. There's a handy-dandy link on the front page of RagingBullets.com if you want to continue supporting the Hero Initiative. It's a great chance for us to help the creators of yesterday who are in need of our help today. And our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. This week I finally got around to reading the first issue of Great 10, and I really enjoyed the in-depth look at this Chinese superhero team and how it spotlighted the accomplished perfect position. And I'm hoping that each issue, it looks like each issue is going to be, while it's having a current present-day storyline, is also going to give us kind of an in-depth origin, because it's 10 issues, of each particular character in the group. And hopefully we get to see more out of the Great 10. It's written by Tony Bedard, art by Scott McDaniel and Andy Owens, Stanley Artgerm Lau. A mild-mannered schoolteacher by day, super functionary known as Thundermine appears in times of need to defend China against evil and injustice. But when Thundermine joins the Great 10 in their battle against the old Chinese gods, he learns the startling secret that the old Chinese gods have been hiding. A secret so massive it could destroy all of China. And it's a 10-issue miniseries, regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $179. So it was a lot of fun, the first issue. I'm really into this right now. I'm hoping that the momentum of the first issue continues all the way through. It's a great chance to get to know this new superhero team and how they're really entrenched in Chinese history and how that different setting really makes this team a little bit different than the other superhero teams in the DC Universe. A lot of political intrigue and a lot of religious intrigue in this particular series, and it causes a lot of turmoil on the team, which is really interesting. So if you haven't checked this one out, it's a pretty cool miniseries so far. Also sponsoring us this episode is InStockTrades.com, where you can get Birds of Prey Between Dark and Dawn, the trade paperback, a new volume collecting Birds of Prey, 69 to 75. Huntress goes undercover to infiltrate a religious cult with a dangerous secret, while Black Canary and Oracle uncover the true nature of Sovereign Bruceaw's organization. Regularly, $14.99, 37% off, only $9.44. And that's 176 pages, written by Gail Simone. Great artwork throughout the whole thing. I love Birds of Prey. I talk so much about how I love her writing and all that. This was my introduction to her writing, was the wonderful Birds of Prey series. And if you haven't been collecting this, InStockTrades.com has their trades over there. Go ahead and check out Birds of Prey. It's an awesome, awesome series. Thank you for sponsoring us, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth in the plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show. And please remember, Preacher is a mature topic with some very, material that's not appropriate for all ages, shall we say. And we do our best to try to keep some of it clean, but it is definitely not appropriate conversation to have blaring over your house. So if you have this open in public to everybody, you may want to listen to it first before you let your little children listen, because we don't want to scar them.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we do our best to try and keep it as clean as possible, but definitely there's some mature content material that, especially in these issues.
Yes, big time.
We dance around as much as we can, but
there's some stuff you can't dance around.
No. It was a fun discussion, though.
It was a
I did not
discussion.
think 3 issues we would talk so much about. I figured this would be a little bit quicker, and you'd have actually more time for the books that we did talk about outside of it. So, interesting episode. And let's jump right into it.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
We're going to have to start off, Jim, by giving apologies to Myron.
Yes, sorry, dude.
And we will actually do an in-depth Blackest Night segment for December. Yeah. But I can't wait to talk about 5.
Oh, God, dude. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
This just brings... This and issue 6 of Batman and Robin have brought more questions to me as far as Bruce Wayne and what's going on. Bruce Wayne, obviously, for those of you that read Blackest Night number 5, and from the show notes, and hopefully you caught the spoiler on this.
Yeah, massive spoiler alert.
Yes.
Massive spoiler alert.
But Bruce Wayne has now risen as a Black Lantern. But did you notice there was no download?
Yeah. Well, there was no download, and you even, when we were just talking about off mic, you said how the one time they had Bruce Wayne in quotes.
Yeah. Necron doesn't even... Necron
his name
quotes
was
him
in
as
quotes.
Bruce Wayne, right.
In quotes.
Yeah. So that's interesting that... Necron seems to understand more about what's going on with Bruce. And could it be that, Bruce is, because of this Omega effect, he is going through constant rebirths and deaths. And that's what I still think that's what makes him this conduit. And that's why we've got another body.
Well, I was wondering about that. Because, at the end of Batman and Robin, they show Dick Grayson going in, there's Bruce's body. What if that occurs prior to putting in the ground? If in, issue 7, we're going to see them actually bury Bruce Wayne and not have multiple bodies.
No, because if you think about where Blackest Night... Well, it's when does Blackest Night Batman take place between what's going on in Batman and Robin?
Hold on, this Batman and Robin takes place after Blackest Night.
Right.
Because they did make a reference to the Blackest Night.
Right.
Okay, so forget that idea that I just had.
Yeah.
So we have 2 bodies of Bruce Wayne. We have 2 Batman bodies.
Right. Why and how?
Yeah. Oh.
And is one a fake? Now, I take it this skull, I'm still very convinced this skull, from the fact that it was reanimated, it is his body.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Because they just reanimate, except the quotes.
Yeah, see, that is the thing that gets me. Was that whole thing the quotes? Bruce Wayne, you've served your purpose, quote unquote. And you actually think about it when Necron uses Bruce to basically kill off everybody else, and brings them and makes them Black Lanterns without taking out the heart. Now he said you served your purpose, so there's something going on there with that. Yeah, I don't know.
But I think because of the nature of Bruce's death in particular, he served the purpose that he served was enabling a unique opportunity for
he's in both.
Necron.
He's in both worlds.
Yeah.
Dead. He's dead and alive at the same time. You think about
it's not a coincidence that
Yeah.
Bruce's skull was able to be used here.
right.
So it's interesting. This has me more convinced than ever, though. Kyle's coming back. Kyle is in the same place that these other ones are.
Yeah, definitely. Kyle, I think, is coming back. I'm very convinced.
There's no way they're
yeah.
killing Superman, Wonder Woman,
Well-
Green Arrow. There's no way.
Yeah, they killed them, but they never took the heart. So those are just
Right.
solid bodies, and I think that's going to be a very easy sever to make.
Right.
So that's good. That
Well, Kyle's heart wasn't taken either.
right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So there's going to be definitely a way to bring back. It's dealing with this whole way station. Maybe there'll be a new master of the way station. I don't know if I think what they're going to have to do is defeat Necron on multiple fronts. You can't just hit him one spot. You can't just do a frontal assault on Earth. You got to hit there. You got to hit his source. You got to hit this backlog that this way station of death. You got to hit him on 3 fronts. I think that's what we're going to end up seeing.
What do the Guardians know that we don't? There's some secrets still to be revealed here at this point. I mean, this is a series that just keeps, every time they reveal something else, there's more. And we've talked about this through every issue of the whole thing as it's gone all the way through. And it is one of the joys of reading Blackest Night. Every clue, every little bit that comes up. These things with Dove now. We got to see Dove have, more of a role now. I love seeing how this is a whole universe, and they're really taking to heart the roles of these characters in their respective places in the universe. I love that.
Yes.
It feels epic, and it feels... I love that Jeff Johns really took to heart each person in the universe and their personality and what they brought to the table, and I'm just so excited to see...
It is absolutely just, because you hit it on the head where he's this how much expensive is it just is going out expanse of the universe is he's pulling into this. It's no one little character is just a throwaway. Everybody has their little connection to it. And this is something that I'm loving about this event, this cross promotional event that feels right. When Sinestro Corps War came out, it was all tied in the Green Lantern universe. This one came out when they initially said, hey, we're going to do this mini, and I was thinking, okay, I don't know if people are going to be liking this because they really like Sinestro Corps. Well, that completely just blew it out the water. This is how you do these mega events with cross everybody. Right here, boom, we're seeing each issues have tie-ins to Blackest Night. We're seeing the extra little minis out there. We're seeing the main trade. We're seeing the main stuff in the green titles. It's like a wow for me. This is this right here should be a, just a measuring stick. This is, if they're doing another event, this is the kind of event I would love to see because it's tie-ins, connections, but it's not just connections for money. They're not just doing this to sell comics.
But that is part of it. And I'm okay with that. It's a company and it's a business. No, one of the things I like that you said, and it's a true fact, it is a cross-promotional event. Yeah. And we talked about last episode how they did those issues that were promotional issues of Doom Patrol and Booster Gold and things like that. They did those right. And you know what? It is one of those things. It is hard for us sometimes as comic fans because we respect the art form, because it is an art form, but it is a business end as well. And if you're going to do this, and it is one of the things that I think as we continue to do these episodes, we do need to look at those cross-promotional issues. I loved how you said that because it's a valid point, to see if they were worth the expenditures. And the ones in particular where they're crossing over into titles, not minis, into titles, those in particular so far I think have been very worth the value.
Oh, definitely spot on. And it's funny because I look at it as a comic book fan, but I also look at it, I do have business degrees, and
right.
so I do look at it from the business side. And I actually have no issue when they do the multiple title, the multiple cover, the variant covers, this and that, and just try to get a little bit more money out of it because it is a business and they have to make money. For us to continue to read this art form we love, they have to make money. It has to be profitable.
Right.
But this is something where I truly and honestly believe that these crossovers, these tie-ins, these connections really are towards telling the story. Yes, plus side, they are making a little bit more money off of these minis. They got to be selling well because this is an awesome story, and people are eating up whatever they can. Well, it is.
Did you see they had so many issues in the last I forget what month it was. Whatever the most recent one that came out was, because I forget with the cover date versus the actual month of release. But the most recent one was released, and it was one of the first times in ages that DC held more of the top spots because of this event. So I'm glad to see that, though, because it is quality.
Yes, and that's the key. This isn't just a promotion. This isn't a crossover. This is just an event just to sell books. This is telling a story. And that's just, I ate it up. Just seeing that final cover of all the heroes who were dead, who came back and who are dead again, really had me excited. I was just like, yes, yes. I'm doing a little happy dance, and this is what, why I'm loving Blackest Night, because this is how I want to see it. And I'm really gung-ho looking to see what happens with Barry and Hal, because those are the only two right now who avoided it. Can they avoid death? Can they cheat death once again? Can the Flash outrun death again? And I'd love that. And I wasn't a Barry Allen fan. I wasn't until Blackest Night came out.
Now,
until Flash Rebirth.
The new Rebirth issue. That was the one for me that we finally got some connections between the guy that we're seeing in Blackest Night now.
Yeah.
And I mean talk about a miniseries that's kind of organically fitting in, and to its own extent, some of the delays in Rebirth, while as a reader they've been annoying to me because I want to read the story, I'm anxious to see it finish, but that issue came out at a time where I'm ready to see Barry Allen fit into the DCU fold again, and boy did they honor. I loved what they did with the twins.
Yes. Oh my God.
Because I was so worried, like, oh, they're gonna, what are they gonna?
I was so worried that they were
gonna
kill off the twins. They were gonna do something, but no. This was
Iris is Impulse. Yeah. Oh, the new Impulse, and I love Bart's reaction to her.
Now, question for you, because here's how I took it is that Jay now has nothing. Jay is a normal kid, and Iris has everything.
Their issues have been explained as, and the reason why they were.
Okay. They were sharing the Speed Force, and you can't share the Speed Force. It has to be in the one body. The one person has to be in control. And it was Jesse who shifted it over. And I thought that was cool because it was
and Iris, too, though. Iris made the decision, though, to be the big sister and to take the responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt you anymore. So she had something to do with it, too. But I did love seeing Jesse there. Now, I'm taking this as Jesse is not losing the role of Liberty Bell. She took on the costume that she and her father shared. She used to, as Jessie Quick, she used to wear a similar outfit to her dad.
Yeah.
But I think that was this role right now. I think we're going to see her acting more as a speedster.
I think we're going to see her
well.
acting more speedster, less Liberty Bell. Which, to be honest, either way, I'm good to go with because I am do too. Like
I love
her.
Jessie.
Yeah, and I'm kind of eating up the fact the Flash family, the speedster family, is growing, and this is just.
But this is vintage Flash right now. So, and it is something for Rebirth. If any of you jumped off of Rebirth, I do encourage you to go back and maybe grab some of the issues if you dropped it for some reason because you're like, it wasn't going here. Because I can understand people doing that. Because Barry in the beginning was really hard to get behind and but through the way the story has developed and the reasons why, his whole life was changed. His background was changed. Reverse Flash killed his mom.
Yeah. Oh.
They completely changed his history now.
Yeah.
And we showed the dangers of time travel. And now he's going back to try and do the same thing to Barry's wife. And that is such an interesting little twist in this whole thing. I'm eating this book up now. And it was something where I've enjoyed it all the way through. I think it's been a gradual grow all the way through. I had a lot of faith in it because of the team. But it was funny. It was one of those books that I've been enjoying because I have confidence in the team. So I know that everything was going to pay off, and that was a lot of my motivation.
Yeah.
It's now to finally see that. To see Max back. And you know what, Max is tethered because the Reverse Flash keeps throwing that on Max, that he doesn't have a tether. That's not true. His tether is Bart.
Yeah.
And I love seeing that. I'm glad that Wally's new costume.
I'm glad they did shift it around a little bit so you can see the two differences. But
it's still a very traditional Flash costume, kind of updated and souped up a little bit. Sleek and stylish the way Wally is, but we didn't do something so crazy and out there. He is the Flash. He's earned that role.
Yeah.
We see him with that tradition and still keeping it in a costume that separates him from Barry a little bit, but also, and they went back to that root that they can generate costumes using the Speed Force. And it gives them a little bit of a boost. And Wally teaching Barry the new trick and how those two... I love that Wally's going to be a co-feature. I think that's the announcement been.
Oh, okay. Co-feature? Cool.
In Barry's book.
Yeah, and And it was funny because seeing her in the Impulse costume, and I cheered.
Yeah.
I literally hooped and hollered. I'm like, yes, because Bart's Kid Flash, and I want to see her so on the Titans now.
But I love that he didn't know how to react to that.
Yeah, he's like, what, Impulse, huh?
Such a great book.
Oh yeah, it's, man, I tell you, I don't know where completely it's going for everybody in there, but I know we're gonna get.
They have to stop him with Iris.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
You know,
if they don't, I'll be sorely disappointed. I can't imagine that.
There's no way they're not stopping him.
Now,
I don't know how.
Barry's mom. Do you think that's going to stick? I do.
Yes, I think that's now set in stone. That's in continuity now.
So his past has now been changed.
Yeah.
And explained a lot of his behavior and changes it. That's funny. That's it's a very interesting way to handle this, and I love that.
Yeah, I know. It's funny how we went right from Blackest Night into
because you talked about Barry.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, Blackest Night is what made me really like Barry Allen.
I agree with you.
More than the Rebirth.
Yeah.
And then as I'm starting to see this, the Rebirth story kicking on, I'm like, okay, this is the guy I'm seeing. That's this cool guy that's in Blackest Night. Now I'm seeing that character birth, which I thought was a great way, once again, using the two separate stories, to strengthen each other. That's universal feel. That's continuity. That is right there is like just hoorah, outstanding. And yes, it gets a
I need a wet nap. No, I agree with your enthusiasm, though, because these are events that I think very much so have been tied together in a way I didn't expect.
Yeah.
Barry coming out of, returning in Infinite Crisis, straight on through, it's been hard to like Barry. It makes sense the way Barry's behaving, and I love that, because that's a risk, to make a character, be kind of hard to connect with at first because of the fact that he's disconnected from the world. And I loved that because it fits. Barry's disconnected from the world, so he should be a guy that you're looking at right now. I can't connect with him. He can't connect with the world and all that. But now we're seeing him reconnect, and we're connecting with him as it happens.
Yeah.
And that is brilliant storytelling and worth the payoff. So anybody, please, if you're a Flash fan at all and you haven't been reading Rebirth, do yourself a favor and pick up this miniseries, because boy, has it gotten good.
And here's the other,
and worth the wait.
And the other cool thing that really both of those stories have done for me is, we have the age-old argument of death in comic books.
Sure.
Should it matter? Should it not matter? And I think we both have been very open saying that as long as they tell it in a good story, bring back the people, that's all I want is a good story. This right here is showing us a really good story to bring back this person who had this epic death. And we're seeing, Barry Allen's death was just this epic event that, I'm glad they took so long to bring him back, because it gave that death, meaning. By this story, they're not diminishing that story that was done before. This is this is like chapter 2 of that story now.
Right.
And it's a continuation on what we saw, and I love that.
The villain brought him back, though, for the purpose of the fact he's not there.
Yeah.
So how can I get revenge?
Yeah.
So I've got to bring him back to get revenge on him.
Yep.
That was the whole point. The whole reason why he was brought back. Nothing to do with Final Crisis. I think I said Infinite Crisis before, but Final Crisis. He was brought. He thought he was brought back for that. Everyone assumed he was brought back for the purpose of solving something we did as readers.
Yeah.
Final Crisis. And the truth of the matter is, when you read that series, I think one of the first things everyone goes, well, Wally could have done all that.
Yeah.
And Barry even said that. I loved that bit. How cool was that?
I know.
When we talk about death in comics, I think we should probably talk about why that's even an issue, why it bothers some fans. I think, is it overdone at times? Sure. And I think that's where, and I do think that comics are starting to become a little bit more judgmental as far as when they do it and when they don't, especially with big characters. But, I mean, I'm going to use a Marvel example right now. Captain America. Killing Steve Rogers was a brilliant idea. I think it made Captain America such an interesting book, and I'm intrigued to see him come back. Same thing with what we're seeing now, Barry Allen. Kyle. Kyle, I cannot believe, and I know there's other people, I know there's listeners out there who disagree with me, and that's okay, and maybe you're right, but in my heart, I feel like there is a bigger story to be told with Kyle yet that we haven't seen. Kyle's story's not done in Blackest Night. Kyle is going to be a big player in this, and that's my personal feeling, and I'm really emotionally stuck on this right now. I feel that we're only seeing a prelude to what Kyle's going to do in this event.
I think it's just really, we've only just begun with Kyle on this one. I don't think we'll see him come back as a Black Lantern. I think it's something, as I said before earlier, about that 3-front assault they're going to need. Kyle is going to be leading that the one front. Kyle is going to be up front leading that, and I'm betting it's going to be him rallying the other Lantern, the dead Lanterns. You know, their true essence, their true spirit that's trapped in the way station.
He understands the world. He understands the way station.
Both ways.
So Superman, Wonder Woman. I'm not Batman. I was going to go Batman. Superman, Wonder Woman, Kid Flash. Right now, their bodies, I'm assuming.
Connor.
Yeah. Their bodies, though, are not in their control. They are not in there. Are you reading it that way?
I'm thinking the exact same thing, dude.
So their essences, then, are where Kyle is. I'm assuming Kyle's there. I know I'm taking a big leap of faith there. They're definitely in the way station. That's pretty hard to argue at this point.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Kyle's there.
Yeah. The only thing they could be right now is they could be riding shotgun along with the Black Lantern.
But Kyle has died and returned from there as well. So there's the open door opportunity for him as well.
Yeah, so...
this series is so good. And that's the key, too. There's been no downtime with this.
Yeah.
Like, it's an 8-issue mini. We're on issue 5. And there's been no downtime. Like, I think it's next month is a skip month. Am I correct?
I'm not sure.
Well, no, it would be... I'm sorry. I think we're getting an issue 6. We've got a skip month coming up. I think it might be after issue 6. January is the skip month.
Okay.
Because this came out end of November.
Right.
So I think we do get a December issue of Blackest Night. And then in January we get the skip month where it's all those series that have been canceled are brought back for one issue. And
I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was actually kind of cool. When I was sitting there doing my order, I was sitting there like, what? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And I started really like, okay, this is neat. And I just, had to get them all just because and some of them were, actually, I think there was a couple of series I hadn't read, and I was like, what the heck, let's just get it. Just so I have the full collection, But I liked seeing, though, that Starman, there's a Blackest Night Starman.
Yeah.
I saw that, I was like, there's going to be a lot of Starman fans happy with this one.
But it's not going to be Jack Knight.
It's not?
No. It's going to be it's going to be characters from the Starman universe, but Jack Knight's not going to be in it.
See, I thought it was going to be Jack Knight dealing with
or
his
at least
brother.
that's what they've said. That's what Robinson said.
Oh, okay.
Robinson's writing it.
Yeah.
So,
well, when I saw Robinson's writing, I'm like, maybe he's doing one more Jack Knight, just a one-shot, or...
Well, he's been quoted as saying that if he does another Jack Knight story, he doesn't want it to be a one-off. He wants it to be something meaty. And otherwise, why do it? But at the moment, he feels that story's done. Now, he could be... And comics have gotten really good at swerving the internet fans as well. So he could be totally swerving us, and I'd be fine with that as well. There's a lot of Starman-themed story, though, that you can tell without having Jack in there.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that for a lot of the reason that you're just saying. It's James Robinson writing something in the Starman universe. That's fine.
What's it gonna? Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah. I was going to talk about it this week, but I want to wait till next week for Cry for Justice, because you haven't read the most recent issue yet.
Right.
And there's a lot to discuss in Cry for Justice, and we will make that as part of next week's episode. Is going to be all current books, new material. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. It's basically going to be all Speeding Bullets.
Yeah.
With we'll do some foundation issues where we kind of go cover to cover, but our Speeding Bullets anyway now has been kind of discussions like this where we there's a lot to discuss going on throughout the universe. I want to talk about Superman, Batman universe, Wonder Woman, a whole bunch of books. So that'll be next week's show. We'll delve more into this. On this episode, we're still going to talk. I want to do our Vigilante Challenge, talk a little bit about that, and I'd like to talk. Are you current with Batman Widening Gyre, the first 3 issues?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about that if we could at the end as well. So,
we couldn't wait. We had to jump into this.
No, it's huge. It was like, whoa! And
this is one of those things. Like, wow.
We will do another. We're going to have a December Blackest Night episode with Myron joining us, and we'll do like more in depth on issue 5. But those themes, thematically, I wanted to talk now about them, especially with what we've seen in Batman and Robin #6. More Bruce Wayne's, and I've been longing for just anything Bruce Wayne. They could do they could have found his elbow. Necron could be using that as his staff or something like that at the moment, and I'd be happy because it's more Bruce Wayne.
You're an idiot.
The quest for Bruce Wayne's pinky.
Oh, God.
I could honestly, if DC really wants to milk this Batman story,
Indiana Norge and the quest for Bruce Wayne.
It would be, yes, yeah. Be pieces parts, scatter them all over the universe, and it's like the quest for,
Oh, God. I get to see you.
The quest for his molars. Yeah. Are they in the skull? Did we see teeth?
I think there were teeth. I'm pretty sure.
All right.
If I'm remembering correctly, it did have teeth.
Yeah, I'd have to go look back at it, but it's got to be missing one that you could search for.
Yeah.
That was, though, to me, I didn't. Did you expect Bruce to be reanimated on any level?
I'll tell you right now. I did not expect his reanimation, and I didn't expect Necron being able to turn living back into dead.
Yeah.
Those are two things that I did not expect to see that happen.
The specific people, though, were ones that have died and come back, so that we've seen now that Necron had something to do with their returns.
Yeah.
So they're interconnecting all the death in the DC universe to Necron, the returns. That is interesting, though. I do think the pivotal thing there is he did not download. There was no Bruce Wayne download.
There was no downloads of the others either.
Right.
And I think that's why. And I think that's why they've been showing the download process. They're really going into it just to show that this is a different, type of.
I didn't notice that. You're right. There would have been no download there. He just killed him and reanimated him. Right. So it'll be interesting. What I would like to see next issue then are these characters talking, because Bruce wasn't.
Yeah.
Will Superman, Wonder Woman be? Is there going to be a distinction between them and Batman? I still think there's a distinction even between them and Batman.
Could be, because Batman's got this whole Omega sanction thing going on.
Right.
He is different than everybody else. That's why he was, he was the gateway.
Yeah. So loving this.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
Jim, our next review is going to be part 2 of our in-depth dissection of Preacher 1 through 12. We're going to do 5, 6, and 7 on this episode. And it was actually your suggestion. We were going to do 5 through 8. But issue number 8 really goes with the last part, because it's all a big story. 5, 6, and 7 all go together, and they actually complete an arc. So we're going to do that. The writer is Garth Ennis. The artist is Steve Dillon. Matt Hollingsworth on colors. Clem Robbins, letterer. Julie Rottenberg as associate editor. And Stuart Moore as the editor. And this series, this arc actually was one of the first arcs for me, rereading it again, that I'm like, okay, now we're getting into the Preacher groove. Because the first one was very introductory, letting us to feel out and get to know the characters. But now that we know who they are, the ball's rolling. There's still a lot of mysteries to be solved there, but we've got at the core who these characters are, and that was interesting. The cover by Glenn Fabry on issue 5, so telling. You know what? The one thing I didn't realize as I was looking through the hardcover, they don't have the usual, the Preacher logo on the top. Yeah. So we actually get to see the full cover
the way it was way it was intended, without anything getting in the way. And you just really could appreciate the artwork.
Yeah, it's cool. Jim, your favorite magazine is we open up with. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. It's like, what else can you say about it?
I know.
It is funny how that magazine, though, appears throughout this entire
arc. Yeah. And that was something I kind of chuckled, because when I first read through it, I was figuring, okay, this is probably a villain thing, or this is just a thing, or maybe this is just something just thrown in. I didn't realize how significant just that simple purchase of that magazine will be. And it's something that, it's one of the things about Preacher that I really, really love about this story is you have little one-off things like that, which may be absolutely nothing, turn into something. And turn into even clues and, just kind of, links, between the characters. And that's something that I love in a storytelling where it's this multifaceted thing where it's spread throughout multiple issues. A little clue here is a story arc here, and I was really enjoying it.
Now, who do you think was buying it there? Was it Psy or was it Super Cop? I think it was Super Cop.
That was Super Cop.
Yeah.
Yeah. At first, when I first thought it was, I thought it was Psy.
So did I.
As we're going through these, okay, that's Psy. And no, that was Super Cop buying.
Yeah, especially because of the way the clerk reacts to him. That he was a curious guy. I'm like, all right, well, because it would be odd, probably he'd think it was odd for him to be purchasing it. So that was interesting. John Toole. It's funny.
Such a...
But you can't help but sit there. When I look at him, he's like the extreme of what we all are afraid we'd be like in that situation.
Yes.
Because you want to be, if you're in that position, this is like classic buddy cop movie, you don't want to be the comic relief.
Yeah.
John Toole's the comic relief.
It's funny because one of the stories that usually anger me, and I usually have a hard time sitting through it unless it's really funny, is the bumbling cop with the super cop.
Yeah.
I hate those pairing ups. Unless they're going to do something really funny that's going to make me fall down laughing, I generally shy away from it. So when this opened up with this arc, I'm like, oh God. First we had the first arc where, my faith is being insulted. Now we have the arc where what I like about cop stories is being, just basically thrown aside. I'm like, they're doing really good. But here's the thing. I sat back and I let myself just read and enjoy it and see what would come out of it. Because, as I said, that first arc, there was a lot of, religious stuff thrown at me. Where, at the end, I was like, okay, that's a good story. So I kind of sat back and said, you know what? Give this a shot. Going to see what it is. And I actually enjoyed this. I did enjoy the bumbling cop with the super cop team up, especially because they had that little twist at the end there. I was like, all right, this is nothing is as it seems in the up front on the cover. It just your first view of it, your first opinion of it is not going to be exactly how it's going to play out. Now there will be some stuff continue on as you thought, but there's always going to be that little hook in it that Preacher has, and that's something for me that I really enjoy about Preacher itself.
Paulie Bridges. Do you think Paulie Bridges had these issues before becoming a cop?
Oh yeah,
and this is just kind of his way of not being able to deal with it.
Yeah, it's funny because he's the classic self-hating, homosexual. And it's...
Well, in our society breeds that because it really is, especially when this book was written, it's something where I think it's become a lot more acceptable now and easier for people to... But, I mean, even now...
Here's the thing. I'm going to make a generalization. Okay. And now, this is not true for every single person in the law enforcement field.
Okay.
But if I was gay and I was a cop, I would not tell a soul. Because there are a lot of...
Doesn't that breed this?
Right. That's why, where he's going through. Same thing, with military, you can't come out because of the don't ask, don't tell. But even if you could, I would still be nervous about that. Same thing with the police force. Mm-hmm. There are some great cops out there who would be completely understanding, like, hey, and there's a lot of gay police officers who are outstanding officers, and everyone said, hey, this is one of us, different opinion than us, but this is still one of us. But there are still a lot of cops out there, a lot of people in the law enforcement, security type, fields, and same thing with the military. They don't like it, and they don't want it, and it's a shot against what they believe, and they don't know the proper way to, deal with the differences. They have the lash out reaction instead of okay, this is somebody different. Let me understand them. Let me get to know this person and see if it's someone I, can like besides this. And it's that kind of mindset, and the occupation in a way does breed that, because you do have a lot of guys who are upfront, they're physical, they're the ones who want to kick in the door, they're the ones who are going to thump you if you run, and it's partially goes hand in hand with the mindset, and I liked seeing that. As soon as I saw this, there was no surprise whatsoever. As soon as we started seeing the initial stuff with him, I'm like, oh my God, this dude is so in the closet, and I like the fact that.
Well, especially because all of his acting out involves that.
Yes.
Which was... It was at first when I was reading this and I was thinking about it, I'm like, well, it would be very hard for a male to come out. I've been watching that TV show Flash Forward, though, and there's a female FBI agent who, because of circumstances, comes out. She's found out by her department, and she has to deal with that. I can understand why she would keep it secret, too, though. You imagine telling a bunch of guys that you're a lesbian.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a position of respect and partnership in this particular case, where you've worked hard to become a respected FBI agent. A bunch of guys would not know. That would instantly turn her, in their eyes, into something she's not. Now, I love the way the show has handled it, because those close to her have they learned something new about her, but through the circumstances, they respect her just as much as they did before. But it is interesting that I could see why she was keeping it secret, and I would say if the extreme circumstances hadn't happened that are happening in that show, she would not have had the opportunity to come out the way that she did. So it is interesting. I've learned a lot through reading this, just about the truths and realities of people who are homosexual in our society trying to deal with coming out, because it is not easy.
Oh no,
and I think in teaching it would be a problem. I'm thinking about my own job.
Oh, big time.
I would not have an issue with it if one of my coworkers came out, but you know who would? A lot of parents.
And it's kind of tough, because you think about it, there's some professions where it really doesn't matter. Well, actually, any profession really. I'm going to say a couple. My opinion, in any profession, it really doesn't matter, gay or straight. That's, I agree. Something you that's who you are, not what you do. And your coworkers that truly respect you and get to know you as who you are as a person will be fine with it, ultimately, except for a few that have deep-rooted issues. But people have deep-rooted issues about a whole bunch of things, not just that. So, I mean, that's just one symptom of something that could come up. But it was interesting in this, how deep this really gets and how contemporary it is and how it still stands today. Like I said, that TV show Flash Forward's experience is exploring that right now from the female end. And it was funny because we're dealing with, again, a branch of law enforcement. And it was cool to be watching that show and reading this, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. So it's a cool opening to this one. Now, Tool has the typical problem of his gun's not firing. And, of course, Dirty Harry shows up. And I love Paulie Bridges is so much the Clint Eastwood archetype of the Dirty Harry character. I love the Dirty Harry movies. So this really fits here. But you're right, there's little distinctions about him that let you know that he was closeted right away. But he blew the guy's mouth off. Now, here's the thing. That fits in Preacher and fits in the story, because Preacher takes an extreme of everything.
Bingo.
Now, in reality, if I was nitpicking, I would have a massive issue with this, because you don't survive on the police force that long by being that rough and by blowing someone's jaw off, by being the tough guy and beating the crap out of them afterwards, because it's,
Do you think they're well respected, though?
What?
Do you think they're well respected, though? Because these two are on a case right now that really they aren't taking seriously.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal with... I'm
actually agreeing with your point.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that to dispute you.
I think they are. Well, I think Super Cop is respected. But of course his partner isn't. And I like the fact that it's Super Cop keeping the partner around. He is saving and keeping the partner around. If it wasn't for Super Cop, Tool would have been gone a long time ago, because he shouldn't be a cop. He doesn't have the right personality. He doesn't have the right attitude. He doesn't have the right just physical ability to become and stay as a detective. He shouldn't be there. He's the wrong person for the job. But Bridges keeps him in line. But it doesn't matter how good of a cop you are, how respected you are. If you start smacking around the prisoners, you're gone, because this day and age, you can't get away with this. And granted, this was written in the 80s, so there was a little
90s.
bit more... Oh, sorry, the 90s. Yeah. There was a little bit more leeway back, a while ago, but it's still... That type of stuff would not fly.
There wasn't that much more leeway then, though. You're right, it's extreme. I guess the point I was saying with these two, though, is very similar to what you see in Dirty Harry movies, which are also over the top. Because, Callahan has to give up his badge every film, or close to it. But what works here is, I guess I took it that Bridges is given cases that they wouldn't give their most well-rounded police officers, the ones that need to handle sensitive situations. Because the reference is made that this case isn't taken, they haven't put the whole force on it because there hasn't been a yuppie death yet and things like that. So they're putting them on a very dirty case that nobody really wants.
But you put a dirty cop on a dirty case.
Right.
You put him on because he's going to get nasty.
Right. But he's not, I don't think he would, I agree with you that I think he's garnered a certain amount of respect, but there's a fine line between respect and fear, and I think that's an aspect of him as well.
Okay.
And I don't know that I'd be the one to fire Bridges if I was a captain, because he's a loose cannon.
Yeah.
So he's one of those iffy kind of characters. And again, we're talking like a film style character that works here. But I definitely would not send him on to protect the mayor or to...
Well, we see some of his interactings with with the widow, with the one widow.
Oh yeah.
You see,
you don't send him in on cases. He's one of those guys you're gonna be like, what do you mean Bridges went there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Lord.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So he's one of those.
Yeah.
I agree with your thing about respect, but I do think that there is a reality to how he's being portrayed to a certain extent, in that they haven't made him like they wouldn't put him on every case possible. But the gun in the mouth and all that stuff is just. I love that Toole calls him on his extreme behavior.
Yeah.
And tries to say something. Then we go to this whole sequence with, and this is the yuppie, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
This is the first big, quote unquote, important person who died. So once and that is something we quickly comment on. They do a little bit more later on. They talk about it. Mm-hmm. How the fact that it's not, so far, the people who have died in this horrific way haven't been prestigious people, haven't been important people, haven't been rich people, haven't been in the right zip code. And that is something you see in any investigation. And it's, when, you start looking at the crimes that are going on in your not nice neighborhoods. You got a lot of just a lot of shootings, a lot of death, a lot of assaults, robberies, that type of stuff. Yeah, police are going to investigate it and they're going to do a job on it. But you throw one of the founding fathers of the city. You throw someone who's like high rent, high money. They're going to put more resources on it. They're going to go after it, and they're going to say, because what happens is it starts the pressure. Once you start the high, more influential people, they start, going on with the mayor, city councilmen, police chiefs, any connections that these people have, they're going to start flexing and saying, hey, I contribute to your campaign, and people are dying. What are you going to do about it? I'm on it. And I like seeing that actually play out in this comic.
I do too. And because it's a reality thing. But that's all the more reason that I think that Toole and Bridges, while I agree with you that Bridges has more respect out of the two of them, he is the loose cannon that they're very careful what they put him on.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of person gets off on cutting off somebody's face and then hammering it back on?
Yeah, that's one sick mother.
Yes. But I mean, know that he did it carefully enough to make sure that the guy, he's got to have injected him with something to take care of some of the pain, I would assume.
Yeah,
because he wanted him coherent enough to realize what he was doing to him. So, I mean, talk about, your serial killer. He's torturing him. It's not just killing him. He is enjoying torturing this guy. It is funny how, we find out, we might as well it's Cy. I mean, Cy's doing this. It's funny looking back and reading this. I was looking for signs that it was Cy. And one thing I want to commend the artwork on this with Steve Dillon's artwork and just the whole art team. If you look at the weight on the arms, and you see that the shirts and things are changed all the way through, which would make sense if you're trying to cover your tracks. You make sure you don't wear the same clothes because you don't want to risk anybody catching that. Because obviously there was a lot of blood.
Yeah, I can't think of skinning someone and not having blood there.
I was looking at the shoes, though, the arms, everything, looking for signs that Cy was there. And I will say, though, he was drawn in such a way that if you look at the arm, you look at the fingers, things like that, it's very consistent all the way through. And that's something, it says a lot about the talent of an artist, that when you look at pictures of Cy, you can see the same arms, the same hands, the same fingers. It's the same proportions. Is what I'm going for. There's a consistency in Steve Dillon's artwork that's really apparent there, that you can look back at these sequences where that is the only clue that we have that it's Cy, is the proportions that are drawn of the character. Because the shirts don't give it away, nothing else does, because I looked for that.
Yeah.
I'm like, is it the same shirt? Is he wearing that anywhere else in here? No. So that was the thing that I thought was really interesting, and it's really something to commend the art on, that you can get away with that.
And it's one of the reasons I like serial killer stories in comic books, because we don't hear the killer's voice.
No.
We see this conversation and we read it, but we can't hear the voice, so we really won't know. And they don't have to do like some, how they do the voice distorters in the serial killer movies and stuff like that, so we don't know who it is. I like seeing, it's something that was cool. And
the first time I read this, part of me thought it might be Paulie when I first read it through. Because he was behaving weirdly. It wasn't until we started getting through and started to realize that some of his behaviors were closeted, and that's what was going through. Then he quickly...
See, I never thought it was Paulie, and
because it was clear he was deviant on an extreme level with his violence and things like that.
Yeah, I never thought, because I'm
talking about before I met Cy.
Right. Yeah. I literally right from the get go, he was just screaming of it, and I was like, I knew he was gay. I knew it wasn't, I didn't think he was a serial killer. When we first met Cy, the thought popped in my head that it could be Cy, but it didn't quickly dismiss. I actually, when it finally was revealed that it was Cy, I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
And it does totally make sense, but I'm with you. I didn't think it was
him because this Preacher is such a great cast of characters. It's not just about the Preacher, it's about the supporting cast. And so I was thinking that this Cy was going to be another link, another part of the cast.
I knew that Paulie and Toole had to somehow connect to it all, though. So that's why I was trying to figure out the connection. I was trying to be smarter than the writer. Because I do that. I don't know if it's smarter than the writer. That's probably not the right way to put it. But I was trying to be as smart as the writer is probably the better way to put it. To try and guess what the writer was going for in the beginning. And I try to do that a lot. Hit smarter than the writer. Not really, because then I'd be writing
you
myself.
weren't.
Yeah, so I'm not. Yeah, and I was obviously dead wrong. Right. You're right. I was a moron when a kid. But I do. I mean, do you do that, though, when you read? You try to, get in the head of the writer, try to figure out what they're doing? Yeah. I mean, I think that's something we all try to do. And you're right. I'm more than I'm successful, I'm unsuccessful. But it is something that shows how they've drawn me into the story. They make me care, which actually proves that the writer's way smarter than me because they hook me enough that I want to try and do it.
The best.
So you're actually, your point isn't lost there. You're 100% correct. Any moment where we've got Preacher and Cassidy and Tulip, or Preacher and Tulip, I keep calling him Preacher, Jesse and Tulip. I always thought of him as Preacher throughout the entire time, but Jesse and Tulip and Cassidy together are some of my favorites because the interplay between them and how Cassidy gives him, when he calls her Turnip, for example, he gives himself away so much that any guy that does that, and I'm guilty of this, there's an interest there.
Oh, yeah.
To a certain extent, maybe not in the sense that you actually want it to go anywhere or anything like that, but there are certain interests there when you do that. I think it's kind of a natural, flirtation that's there, and it may not be that you're thinking, well, geez, it's going to go somewhere, or even thinking that way, but it is something that I think happens between a male and a female in a certain way where you're doing that, and it is like a harmless flirtation a lot of times. In Cassidy's case, though, it's really apparent that it is more than a harmless flirtation. Because there's something, he, just by his very nature, is not afraid to skirt the line.
Yeah, and it's funny because, as I was reading this, the more I'm reading, I do see, the stronger attachment, the flirtation, but I think there is the code that, he will never cross over. Cassidy will never cross that line because she is Jesse's girl, and... I was waiting to throw that one out.
I do it. Yeah.
But
I'm glad you didn't sing it.
I thought about doing it, and I decided no.
You're going Rick Springfield. I knew. And the second you said it, I'm like, oh man, he isn't going to, is he? Should I give him the opening? Should I not? And I was trying to hold it in, and I just had to start laughing. Do you do that when you read things now?
Yes.
Do you look for musical references?
Yes. Before I looked for, I still look for Star Trek references.
Right, of course, because that was your biggie for a while, the red shirts.
I'm just doing the song references now. I'm having fun with it. Should make for an interesting episode 200. That's all I'm going to say.
There was actually people were thinking that there was going to be a musical one. What would I do?
Actually, let's just dispel that right now. I had fun with and I was laughing my head off on some of the stuff because, oh God, I just opened Pandora's box. I fell down laughing. No, 200 is not going to be a musical episode. It was funny when it was thrown out there. I thought about, man, is there any way I could do? Is there I was thinking a title maybe that I could do in music or I could do in rhyme or something like that. And I'm not that talented. I couldn't pull it off. And
the other one that was thrown out that this one actually is something that I would like to do down the road. It wasn't something I was thinking about for 200, but it is something that if I have time, during a break or something like that, I've seen other podcasts do it, a live show.
Yeah,
where you're able to let people kind of join in through the internet and stuff like that and do a live episode like that. Logistically, that is something I would love to do at some point. And if find the way to do it and test it and make it workable, I would love to be able to do that. The problem with that, though, is you really have to have a setup and a planned schedule so people actually get a chance to talk without it being... Because I would want the people who are there to actually be able to talk. So that is something. That is not what I was thinking for 200, but I like the idea a lot. And... if we can do it logistically at some point, I'd love to do it. Even just to have people be able to be a part of it and be able to react to just you and me recording the episode, where they can kind of like pipe in and do a comment here and there and that type of thing. That would be fun as well. But that isn't the suggestion for 200. 200, we're thinking the two ideas we have are big and epic. The one idea that we have that I think we both like the most, we're both thinking is insane.
And when we think it's insane, it's got to be
bigger in
wow.
scope. It's bigger in scope than anything we've ever done.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But it is funny, the more I think about that idea, that is really the one I'd like to go with.
We're going to be testing the Saint Mariah theory.
Yeah. But I like the way we originally... It is something, and I know I'm throwing this out randomly in the middle here, but... it is something we suggested a long time ago on the show. It was a listener suggestion. I believe Matthew Guy suggested it ages ago. So I'll even throw that clue out there, although I might be wrong. It was something that we were going to do for an anniversary show. It never came about just because of 10 gazillion other things that we wanted to do. And the way we would do it now, it would connect very comfortably into a lot of what's going on today. So it would be a fun way to discuss it in comparison to a lot of what's going on today. I want to throw a clue out.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know that would help anybody, but it helps us because we know what it is.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, you're giving away too much.
Not really, though, because that's really vague. Jim, I think we're leaning towards that, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. Come on. We both got that twinkle in our eyes going.
Yeah. So I take it idea number 2 is something we're still considering on the back burner.
Yeah.
Well, considering, you know what, I will say this. Considering idea, and I think we will put it on the back burner, because considering idea number 2 is a Vertigo title, we should probably save that for the future, seeing as we're doing this. That would lean us towards the insane idea.
Yeah, that kind of leads us towards the...
Although the Vertigo idea is pretty insane, too.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the book anyway. So this is funny. You would think with everything... Jesse's being hunted right now, and that is something that's been brought up here. His whole parish has been destroyed. People have seen him. He would be hunted, wanted for questioning, because that's a massacre.
Yeah, there's a lot of blood on his hands, but it's not really on his hands.
But they don't know that.
Yeah, the one guy who walks away from a slaughter is usually the killer.
Right, or knows something.
Yeah,
right.
So I like the fact that, Cassidy and Tulip both are thinking like fugitives. They're like, hey, we got to maintain low key here. We got to be careful what we do, how we do it.
I do like that their world, because of everything that's going on, he's got the power of God, he's got the word of God. That would lead them to interact with some people we would normally consider conspiracy theorists, crazy people, UFO hunters, things like that, which is how Sai is brought into this whole thing. It's a friend of Cassidy's. Cassidy's a vampire. This is who they're hanging with. So their world has gotten very strange. It was already strange. Their past is nothing compared to where it's going right now, which is really, really bizarre. And they would be cautious, like, okay, so we're going to let this crazy UFO guy get involved here, and how? And Cassidy trusts this guy. Cassidy's bringing this guy in, but he's also promising that he is not going to reveal anything about who they really are, and they just need more information on God and where to find God, because that's where their hunt is. And I love this, that Jesse feels this need to put God to task.
Yeah.
On all of this.
It's it's the day of reckoning, and I kind of like this. It's blasphemy, in one hand, and then it's a good storytelling, because it's just, you think about it. This is the preacher who's like, it's time, it's time for us to have the one-on-one, what's going on here? And I do like that overwhelming story, but it's not just solely a religious book. We have these side stories going on. And just when they brought in, Sai, I was just like, I saw this guy. I was like, okay, he's friends with Cassie. Yeah, he fits. It was like, seeing a bunch of my old buddies from college or some of my old friends from high school. And just you have that rapport back and forth. They have the same SOB type of humor, and I enjoyed seeing this guy, and that's why I immediately dismissed him as the killer.
I did too, especially when he was talking as a reporter about the Reaver Cleaver story and telling. He was so calm and everything. Yet there was a rich sense of humor about him. Like, okay, this guy's genuinely a reporter. He probably knows some quirky stuff, and he's going to be able to help them out. I thought maybe he was going to become more of a supporting cast regular, like we're going to see him appear regularly and that type of thing.
I was thinking an Oracle kind of thing for Jesse. Later, that's what I was honestly thinking. That later on we're gonna have stories where Jesse's gonna call him up, and say, "Hey, Cy, I need some info. Oh, okay, you want to do this? That's how I was seeing him gonna play out in the future stories. I was just like, so when we get the twist,
so brilliantly played out though, because the clues are here.
They not only are clues there, they blatantly make it you see it.
Yes.
Very obvious, very upfront with it.
It's a great story to reread for that reason, too.
But he's such a great guy, and he fits in with this crew that you dismiss it.
My buddy Jim, my other buddy Jim, guy's like a brother to me, just like you are and all that. He gets together with, and this is such a true guy meeting. He gets together with our friend Pete, a guy we grew up with. Pete brings over a taser. So, the typical joking thing between two guys, the two guys are tasering each other. And Jim's son walks into the room, and he's laughing at the two of them doing this, because the two of them are tasering each other, trying to, and then they let him. Pete goes to Jim's son, he goes, "Taser me." And he goes, "Really, taser me?" Because he said, "I'm afraid to do it really, strong myself, so can you do it?" So he has him taser him, full blast. And I'm sitting here I'm like, this is only a guy thing.
Yes.
And any female listening to this, you're probably like, they're morons.
Yeah.
And you're right.
Yes.
And I'm not just picking on them. It's the first story that's coming to my head at the moment because I've heard it very recently. I'm guilty of this same kind of stupidity. So it's not anything on them. It's one of the reasons why we get along so well. But it is a guy thing. Like when they're talking about this moment and Jesse's explaining to Tulip that this is a guy thing very much, the joking around between the two of them. I'm like, this story came to mind to me immediately because, and I connected with it. I'm like, it is. We all are guilty of doing these dumb things. And if there was a female who we were interested in present, we so would not do that. It is funny how you drop the guy thing whenever there's a female present. That's a sign that somebody likes a girl when they're the one who's not participating. That's why Jesse's sitting at the table. He's not over there engaging in the male bonding between the two of them. And I really did like that bit. The journalist bit, though, between television and newspapers, I really liked. The comparisons between the two, that there would be a competition, especially in this era. We're going back into the 90s. Nowadays, it's really funny that it would be television stations competing against the internet.
Yeah. Well, the written print is dying quickly.
Yeah.
And it stinks because I
think the better writers are transitioning over to internet websites. Your newspapers are transitioning over to that. I think they're looking at more of a model of publishing news on the internet versus paper.
Yeah, and it stinks because that's a whole industry that's going to be out of business. The physical printers are gone. They're going to be gone soon, and it'll just be an internet and electronic posting. So it'll be your web designers. So instead of having this fleet of people doing all the paper printing, you're only going to have a couple geeks in a room going, uploading, done. And it's.
I think you're still going to have the journalists.
Well, you'll still have the journalists
because you need those
someone,
people. Yeah, with the creativity and the voice and everything like that.
I'm talking to people behind the scenes.
I agree.
That's where I really hate seeing the death of the newspaper because there's hundreds of people it takes to print those papers, and plus you got paper, and then you got the delivery people. People who are doing the delivery stuff. It's, there's a lot of people who are slowly losing their jobs over this. And even you look at some of your reporters, you're going to lose some of the reporters. You'll keep most of them, but you will lose some.
That was the one thing I noticed right away, though. I'm like, boy, this is. I wonder how this sequence would have been written now. I think he would probably have a very different role.
Yeah.
Than he does today. Because even magazines are.
Yeah, see, the magazines I think are surviving a little bit better. than newspapers, but those are even starting to go. Because
the big magazines, their readership is dropping.
Yeah, and there's been a couple that have, like these
I still
long-running...
get them,
yeah, there's been some long-running magazines that have shut down now. Just because of what we're getting with. It's kind of stinks. Now, I don't think Cy is going to have a problem, because he's more of a National Enquirer person than a New York Times person. So I think he'll be fine. Well, he would have been fine.
I think most of your journalists, as long as they diversify, are fine.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a role for them. Comics is one of the things. Why do we talk about digital comics? Not because we're looking to replace print as fans. We want comics to be around, and they have to be delivered in a different way to reach a different audience. And I think it's kind of a reality. I'm still going to collect the paper as long as they've got them. And I think there will be a market for that for a long, long time to come.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's a new market to tap in there. This is all interesting. But so anyway, we're talking about Cy, and this leads into this whole thing about Super Cop and Tool and how they're brought in. Cy has a connection to them because he wanted to get the inside scoop on the Reaver Cleaver story, and how Bridges... I could see Bridges not being one that wants to get close, especially... I didn't realize at first why.
Yeah.
But now we totally understand with his personal life, Bridges would not want reporters getting too close to them. He would not want to have a reporter who he was connected with, who would get to know him outside of his job, because when else would they connect but in personal life? He would not want to build that relationship. He would want to stop that immediately.
Yeah,
little does he know. Cy already knows a whole bunch about him, but the moments between Jesse and Tulip here, this is a great example of great artwork and good writing, because you want all of us as readers to know that she does care for him and he cares for her. But the interplay is something that is so realistic, because again, it's kind of like the play we were talking about with Cassidy and Tulip earlier on. But in this case, it's much stronger, it's much deeper, there's personal hurt there. Yet neither of them have given up the emotional attachment they have with each other. Why are they together is the constant question all the way through. Why is she still there? Why is he still there? Why haven't they split and kind of gone their separate ways now? Circumstances brought them together, yet there's no reason for them to stay together right now, realistically.
Yeah.
Tulip could go her own way. There's nothing drawing her. And I love the way that feels like there's something there. She smiles, she smirks at him and things like that, but then there's a bitterness that comes across when she does things like In Your Dreams. And it is shown so well in the dialogue and in the artwork between the two of them. The interplay is rich, and it feels very much like a very real relationship.
Yeah, it's the romantic comedy type thing, because I admit I do catch some of those romantic comedies, some of those date movies. I kind of like some of them. There's some that I absolutely hate, and there's some that I think are kind of funny that I still enjoy watching. Was it Sleepless in Seattle? I still like that movie. I shouldn't really probably like that movie, but I do. And just seeing the banter between Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, just going back and forth, I liked that. I thought that was a good way to show it.
I'm a sap for romantic
comedies.
And I'm going to admit it. I am. My wife and I will run them a lot, and I will say I'm the one that has the Netflix account. So I'm the one that pulls out movies, and I do try to pull things that she will like as well, because I'll grab all the action movies and stuff that she could care less about. But I typically, when I pull out romantic comedies and stuff, I will look for ones that I'm interested in as well, because I want to see them. So we'll sit there and enjoy them. So I won't even make up the excuse that I get them for my wife. Those date night movies and stuff like that, I actually like them. So I get a kick out of them, because especially romantic comedies are the key there. I enjoy this humor in it, but then you get this sappy, that's kind of cool moments and that type of thing. And there's usually a hero guy in there that you're rooting for that's doing everything horribly wrong, like Jesse does. It's fun. It is an interesting comparison here, because there are moments like that where Jesse, you get the same thing. Look, I'm trying to apologize here. You ain't making it too easy on me, I didn't mean to start up about what you were doing in Dallas, and I will explain why I left you before soon. But it's kind of hard, because it has to do with stuff that I don't like to talk about, okay? And I'm just like, whoa. These moments, that was such true dialogue, because he wants to tell her everything, yet he's not sure how. And I got to think there's part of him that's afraid of not only pulling her into that world, which is what we're going to talk about in part 3, but also part of him that's worried about how she will react to that world. Dude's scared of losing her.
Yeah, and I tell you, that's actually honest fear that he would have, because when we do learn exactly what happened, and it's really freaky, really messed up. And I've had some weird stuff go on in my life where you tell somebody that you care about what's going on, you get that look. You get that, whoa, you are a serious nut jobby look. And it's absolute the worst thing to see in someone's face that you care about.
Right.
And you try to avoid it. And if you've ever had that happen to you once, you will dodge that bullet every single time for the rest of your life, because you never want to see that look. You never want to get that same reaction on someone. You never want to have it, down the line where you're thinking, man, what if I never said that? I should have kept my mouth shut. Well, can you keep your mouth shut forever? And we eventually see that you can't keep it shut forever. You do eventually have to come completely clean. And that's one of the reasons part 3, I really loved that story, was just everything just got laid out on the table, and it was just a full, okay, let's throw out the guts there and see it all. And I love that about that. And you see, moments like this with their interaction back and forth that leads up to those great moments between them when the truth comes out. So it's,
I'm saving, by the way, from listeners some of the preacher comments till the last part 3. The reason why is a lot of people are sending in comments kind of about their feelings about the whole thing, so I'm just going to take listener comments that have been emailed to me and bring them as a part of part 3. If anybody wants to send in audio comments or email comments, we're going to skip a week, obviously, like we've been doing. We actually skipped 2 weeks because the Blackest night went bigger than we thought. But it looks like we're going to skip a week, and it'll be 189. We'll wrap up the last part of Preacher. So if you have comments on Preacher that you would like to get on the show, your own thoughts and feelings about that last part that you would like us to discuss on that episode is going to be big. It's going to be all Preacher. We're not going to have time for anything else on that episode because we're going to do the last 5 issues on that one. But I'd like to bring in listener commentary and thoughts onto that one, so just kind of a shout-out to you guys on there. But this part where they kind of all split up, and Cy talks about the Internet, again, showing the difference between, a decade ago, what it was like. The Internet was not more than a decade ago at this point, but the Internet was not something that you would think commonly that everybody uses. Like today, if you throw out the Internet, that would be the first place people would look.
Yeah, you jump online, say, okay, what's this? Oh, okay, there it is. Yeah, boom.
But Jesse's like, Internet? Computer whiz kid, too. Talented boy we got here. Your mom thinks so, too.
Your mom jokes.
Yes.
Classic on anyone with everybody. It is just one of those things that you got to throw out there every so often.
These moments, though, you see Tulip there, and it's almost like in that moment where she's looking away, she's deciding what to do. Like in that moment, you could see her either saying she wants to spend time with Jesse, or I'm going to be stubborn and walk off. I've done this. I've had this done to me. I mean, it's real. That is a very real moment. Where you make a dumb mistake. Like right there, the two of them could have gotten back together, maybe had some real conversations afterwards, but neither of them are ready yet. Mm-hmm. They both want it, and you can feel it in that moment. That was an art moment. And look at the look on Cassidy's face.
Yeah.
He's not sure how to react to that. He sees it right there. He's looking away. You see the determined look on Jesse's face. He's digging his feet in. She's digging her feet in, yet he knows it bothers him to a certain extent there.
Well, yeah.
He's not comfortable with it.
He doesn't. It's the conflicting of emotions.
Yes.
Jesse's his bud. Tulip's this girl that she's this cool girl, and he's like, right. I'm not. He doesn't want to He doesn't want to jump in there to prevent them from being together. But he probably doesn't want to see them together. But he knows they're both should be together. He knows them well enough now that he's probably thinking, these two should be together. What are they doing? She's a great girl. What are you doing, dummy? Go after her.
So many of my favorite artists are really talented. A lot of the artists we've talked to on our show, when you and I talk about art, it's one of the things that I really enjoy. There's so many great people that are drawing comics nowadays that are really good at capturing mood and tone. Most recently, I was looking at the DC Source, the blog that they've got up there about previews. They had sketch material from Blackest Night Wonder Woman, drawn by Nicola Scott. She tells so much in the faces of her characters. One of the things I really love about her artwork, I'm trying to get some of her artwork, some of the original artwork, and get some of it to frame and put up here, just because I would love to have something original that she's done with Doug Hazelwood, or even her own pencil sketches on there, because I haven't had a chance to meet her at a convention to have a commission done. My favorite artists, though, they are people who I seek out at conventions. Freddie's done some wonderful pieces for me, Jamal. I keep going on about that, but what I like about having sketch material from artists and original sketch work is you really get to see what they were going for in mood and tone there, and then what the colors brought to it. When they add, it's how the whole team kind of puts everything together. So I love seeing art and stages and seeing what each layer has brought to comics. This is a great example, though, of just a great art team who knows how not to lose mood and tone. Because so much is told here with Cassidy's worry, Tulip walking off in that sequence, and then the smirk with Cassidy there. Yeah. You talk about the buddies and that code, and you see it there in that moment. You know, in the mood and emotion of these guys, that these two guys have quickly become friends. They're kindred spirits. They've found something that connects them. Two very different fellas, yet they've got similar quirks and similar senses of right and wrong that connect them. Cassidy looks up to Jesse, and I don't think he completely understands why yet, but you see that there. There's something about Jesse and who Jesse is that Cassidy's like, I want to be that guy. I wish I was that guy, and I'm gaining something from this relationship. And Jesse's gaining that buddy that he sees that in Cassidy too. Yeah. That buddy relationship. There's something he's getting from Cassidy that he needs right there as well. That there's something about the two of them. Like he's a misfit, and Jesse feels like that at times as well. So there's a relationship there that you can see naturally fitting. And I think we as fans, we have those. You and I have a friendship like this where it does. And I mean, it feels very real and very natural. We don't go jumping off Empire State Buildings and stuff like that. But
now, which one of us is the vampire, and which one of us has the word of God?
I don't know what to talk about that.
Okay.
I don't shut up, but that doesn't mean I have the word of God. Yeah, so I don't know what our roles are here. So I could be the vampire, sucking your life away with my words. So I don't know. So I'm not quite sure what our actual archetypes are in relationship to that, but. I have trouble there. Do you have a role you feel comfortable in? I guess I'm the other guy. I think on any given day we wished we were Jesse.
I know. I think I'd like to say I'm Jesse, but I'm not smooth enough.
No.
The dude is smooth. Yeah. He's got the Rico Suave thing going there.
I think Cassidy at his worst is probably the two of us. Maybe that's why we get along. But we get Tool and Bridges here and the aftermath of this. And it is funny how I do see here, and I love Tool here, because Tool is doing the straight police work of doing the interview afterwards, trying to get the information, trying to do it like a professional. And Bridges has no patience for that. And there's probably a lot of reasons why Bridges has no patience for this right now. Bridges has to be somewhere. Bridges, but it's not. Bridges is carrying around a lot of demons. And I love that we know this now looking through, that he's carrying around a lot of demons with him, a lot of things that he's not comfortable with dealing with, and it's probably what's preying on his mind.
Yeah.
So he needs to lash out.
And again, this is an extreme example.
Oh, sure.
Just the nitpicking in me just immediately started buzzing. Like, there's no lawyer present. And a confession, a confession that was received under duress or intimidation isn't valid. None of this would work. This is completely just throws the law out, and the guy's on the street in 24 hours, and no one would sit back and let them do this.
Right. All of this is extremes, though. I mean, like The Boys. When you talk about a book like The Boys, talk about extremes, but I mean that's deliberate.
Yeah, I know, and that's and as I was saying, it's like this is the deliberate stuff that normally completely turns me off. Mm-hmm. Like NYPD Blue. I love the story, but sometimes their interrogation scenes angered me because they threw out the book on how you actually truly did an interrogation, and they did it for the show because there's limited time that you have.
Oh, of course.
But
and how much of that is
stuff
it's artistic license for television
and stuff like that. It used to really annoy me. This one. It should annoy me, but I was okay with it because Preacher is about extremes. So I was like, you're sitting there and I'm reading this, and yes, this is so extreme, so over the top, so not true, but I'm okay with it. And it was a weird thing. That's the weird thing with me when I read Preacher is that I'm reading stuff that I shouldn't be okay with. If this was occurring in a Batman title and Gordon was doing this type of stuff, I would be furious. But I'm okay here.
That is funny. I probably would be too. Like if Gordon was taking and making 99 copies of a guy's face to get him to cooperate.
Yeah.
I would probably have an. I'm with you. I was thinking because I know you're more of a stickler with this than I am. But I agree with you on that. I am very picky on Jim Gordon. I want Jim Gordon to feel very real.
Like a real, true cop. Yeah.
I'd also, conversely, be upset if Jim Gordon was portrayed the way Tool is.
Yes. Again, same feel. Mm-hmm. And that was part of the reason with the Michael Keaton Batman movies, I always had an issue, with...
Gordon?
Yeah, Gordon, because he didn't seem like a cop. He seemed like an idiot.
More so, and I think in Batman Returns, they got a little closer, the sequel. The relationship between them, but it never, that was one thing about that series, because I enjoyed that series of movies. I'm not going to knock them and say that I didn't. I did. I loved what Burton did. I do think, though, that Jim Gordon was lost in those films. I think that's one of the weaknesses of those films, is they never captured that character. Batman Returns got him a little better.
Yeah, a little bit better, but still not as...
Because the actor, wasn't, there were moments in Batman Returns where I saw Jim Gordon as a character there where I'm like, there's so much potential here, because the actor was doing a great job in Batman Returns of capturing the Jim Gordon role. They just didn't go in the logical place where it needed to go with him. And it was just something that script-wise I don't think they understood the character. But I will say I did like those series, the latter ones.
Yeah. Well, there are parts on the latter ones I liked. There was one glaring thing that still angers me.
Well, the funny part, I liked Val Kilmer, for example, as Bruce Wayne. But I think there was a lot wrong with that film.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw out with Clooney. You know what? I kind of liked Clooney in the role. I just don't think Clooney was given the correct script. Seeing how he acted in From Dusk Till Dawn, seeing how some of the stuff he did on ER, just the way he played the character, he could have really played a great Batman. But I don't think he was given a good script.
No, you're talking about with Puffy Bane.
Still angry.
I liked Poison Ivy, though.
Yes, Poison Ivy was pretty good.
Uma Thurman was great as Poison Ivy. So there were things in that film where I'm like, oh, there's potential here. I know there was a fan version of that film, which one of our listeners said. I still haven't watched that. I'd love to sit down and watch the corrected. We'll have to do that one of these nights. I've saved it to watch with you.
Yeah.
And we never got around to watching it. We should do that one night to take a look at the fan cut of it, because... That's the reason why I haven't watched it yet, is because we haven't watched it together to see what the fans did with that film, because there were elements.
Yeah, of a good movie.
Yeah. So, all right, back to this book anyway.
Preacher.
Well, talking about cop roles and things like that. This whole cooperate, it's funny. And if you take it as over the top, it really works, because he's copying his face till the guy agrees, and even when he agrees, he keeps going.
Yeah.
And that is the part where, as they're walking down the hallway, that's what you get when you work with Paulie Bridges. And there's no other way to say that. That's the life with Paulie Bridges. I mean, the only reason I'm still on the force, guy like him, as a partner, even a Jonah like me comes up looking good. Without him, I don't even think I could get bought off by the mob. So that's where you see where Tool's place is and all this type of thing. And he's so wrong to look up to Bridges, though, and I do think this arc's also about Tool realizing that maybe he needs another hero. I would definitely get out of the police force if I was Tool.
He's the wrong personality for the job.
Yeah.
He really should not be doing that. He's a guy who I don't even know what to say he should go into, because I don't know him well enough, but he shouldn't be a cop.
No.
Yeah.
Especially you talk about a respect. And I do think people respect Bridges because he will do the things that they know better than to do. Because the way they talk about Bridges, they all, talk about, man, look at that Bridges, the stuff that he'll do and things like that. He's that guy. But I think your average police officer on this force would never in a million years do what Bridges does, because they're too smart for it.
Yeah.
They understand right from wrong on a level that Bridges doesn't.
There's a line you can't cross.
So these pages with this commentary right here, where they're talking about Paulie and really more directly making fun of Tool, that dialogue there is a lot more realistic to me. It's what I think real police officers would be saying if they were working with these two.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to deal with either one.
No.
To be honest with you, because it's with you have the whole the blue line that you don't cross. If one of your cops does something, crosses a line, and does you cover for him, you don't throw him under the bus. But the problem with that is if that cop is putting you in a situation where you have to lie, or putting you in a situation where you have to, you see something wrong and you don't, report it, they're making it even harder on you. So how much the respect goes both ways.
Right.
If one cop makes a mistake and does an honest oops, okay, yeah, they're going to cover it and they're going to help you out. Or if they're, if they're caught doing something stupid, like, hey, that was dumb, yeah, and they cover for you and everything's okay, fine, that's going to happen. But both of these two are extreme, and they're constantly doing something they shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. They're constantly just, putting everybody else in a situation. So
and that's why when these eras right here kind of fix that for me.
Yeah.
In the sense that you get to see what I consider to be more closer to the real aspect of a police officer in these particular
And you
moments.
have these and we had the glimmer in the first chapter too.
Bridges doesn't wear a bulletproof vest.
Right.
Well, he's a moron.
Yeah. And everybody, you have to wear one.
Right. So he's a moron.
Simple.
And that's why Tool's there. But that was interesting commentary to me because I'm like, okay, Bridges is a moron.
Yeah.
That's not bravery. That's stupidity.
Yes.
I think going into a firefight wearing a bulletproof vest is bravery. There's a fine line between being brave and being stupid, and there's times where Bridges is just plainly stupid. This Empire State Building bit, I really like.
You know what? You got to do the tourist thing sometimes. Every time we're in New York Comic-Con and we're hanging out with our friends from over there, and I'm always walking down the street, I'm doing the looking around going, wow, look at this. I look like a tourist. I know I look like a tourist. I don't care. Because, there's sometimes you got to do it, and New York is one of those cities,
It's also, though, this is a great moment where this is something that Ennis has a strength at. He did this in Hitman. He did it in The Boys. He's done it here. It's in all these extreme situations, he takes time for good, strong, character-driven development, where you get to know these guys like real people. Yes, it's extreme. They're out there. It's over the top. But there are these quiet moments. I'm looking for the Lord because I figure he's deserted his creation. I aim to bring him to book for that little transgression, to confront him and hear his answer to that charge. He has an obligation to do right by the world. He's made and the folks he's peopled it with. He's quit and runs. He ain't facing up to his responsibilities. Figure if I start lording it over people with this gift I got, just to make life a little bit easier, who am I to talk about responsibility? And that's that bit right there. You got power. You got to use it right. And there's a code with Jesse here that he's saying, if I'm going to go and get in God's face, I got to believe what I'm saying. And not just as much as I'm not pulling the wool over his eyes. I got to show him that there's right and there's wrong. There's being a man and there's being a chump. And that's what Jesse Custer is all about to a T. And these moments, you see why Cassidy is developing more and more of a loyalty to this man. Because Jesse isn't just saying this stuff blowing smoke. He believes it. And Cassidy admires that. He respects it because he's not that guy. He wants to be that guy.
Well, and Cassidy does have a code, too.
But he's not this guy.
Yeah, well, he's not on the same level as Jesse, but I think by the end of this, you do see a strong code from Cassidy, and you see this, where he is acting as, more like Jesse, but not.
I don't want to spoil
Jesse.
anything, though. As the series develops and you get to know a little bit about Cassidy's past, you're going to get to see that Cassidy wants to be Jesse, but he's not Jesse.
Yeah.
And it's one of the great things, and I don't want to spoil anything there, but it's one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about this and why I think it's so cool. And I don't want to spoil the events that happen and things like that and how it goes, but this is one of the great relationships in the series. And it's great because this is at its core, at its root of who these guys are. And I'm going to say it again. If you liked the first 12 issues of this, you have no idea how good this gets. Because this is phenomenal. Reading this again, I'm like giddy in a way that I was when I first read the series. And this is what this series does at its core. You get to know these guys so well. Get to see both of them with their flaws. And we're going to see a lot of what Jesse's past was like leading up to all this as well in part 3 of this. But it is one of the things that I really enjoy about this series is these character-driven, depth-filled moments. Writers that can capture this can let you get to know the characters. We talk about Gail Simone all the time. It's one of the strengths that she has as a writer is she lets you get to know these characters at their root and their core, and like Secret Six and Wonder Woman and Birds of Prey when she was doing that. Welcome to Tranquility. It's stuff that I keep going back to
You keep
because
rereading
I
it
like
because, yeah.
good character-driven.
Yeah.
Get me in their head. Let me get to know them. I don't care what kind of nonsense and craziness you got going on around them. Make me care about the characters. You can convince me anything, and I'll follow it.
And there's something also about this page, just the layout of it.
Oh,
I like
yeah.
how it just goes through, and you got these great, awesome moments where Jesse's really laying it down, and then you just have that one panel where it's just nothing but silence.
Yeah.
The two of them are just standing there. It's drawn from the perspective off of the observation deck, so they even have the fencing going across their faces. It's just that moment of silence after this significant, just basic declaration on Jesse's part as to who he is, why he's doing it, what he's going to do, and you just have that. And in real life, you have those moments where you just have the pause, just that kind of pause where you just think about
contemplating.
it. Yeah.
What are we going to talk about next? Should we get deeper or should we?
Yeah. Where do we want to go? Do we want to keep, or do we want to make this lighter? Do we, is this getting too serious? Is it not serious enough? What are we going to do? Where are we going to go with it?
The reason why he's not using the word on Tulip.
That was awesome. And that was just such a true and valid use. You can't do it. He can't force himself on her. She'll hate him forever. And there is no forgiveness.
Here's the real deal here. He loves her.
Yeah.
He genuinely loves her. He would love to get in the sack with her. That's, obviously a goal of his. But if he can't do it because she wants to be there, he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's important to him, and that's part of his code as well. He could do this the easy way.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't really have her, which is what he really wants. It's more important to him that he has her heart than that. And I get sappy for that kind of stuff. This is really good.
And I actually started thinking beyond even just the sex thing. You figure you're having an argument and you want to make a point. She's like, hold on, just shut up for a second. And how many, and if you could force her to be quiet just for a second,
right.
That would be the same type of deal.
It's a violation.
Yeah. There's so much power he has that he's got to be so careful on not to use it on her at all. Even just something as hold on.
Right. Right.
That would ruin it right there. That one slight usage. When he did it to Cassidy in the first issue, he did it, then he did it again to him. Like, that's it, I'm leaving. He kind of saw what happens when you take that trust.
He would not willingly do that to Tulip.
He can't.
No, and that would be. Woof. It's one of the things that I love about this character so much is those deep moments. This bit with Cassidy, where he starts talking about the truths. Yeah. We learned the truth. One of the many advantages, believe me. Perfect vision. Nose like a bloodhound. Takes me 5 seconds to run the 100. I can drink 50 pints and walk a straight line and kick the shite out of Mike Tyson while I'm doing it. And I'll show you something else. And he gets up there and starts climbing over the top of the fence. And I can't stand it any longer. The killing, the mockery, all that other stuff. Jumps to his death. And there you see Cassidy fooled you. Just such a great moment. And here was the bit I did not expect. And it is funny, when I reread this again, it'd been years, and I knew that this bit with Bridges came in. I didn't realize how quick this moved.
Yeah.
Because it really does. There's a lot of depth, and there's a lot of content in these issues. We talk about dense reads. It's funny, when we talked about, we're like, oh, geez, we're doing another 12-issue one. And it's another dense 12-issue. I didn't remember this being so dense in its storytelling. There's a lot going on here, because we find out with Bridges here that Bridges has his own fears, and we see fear for the first time on Paulie Bridges' face here. Hello, Detective Bridges, do you want to do it again? Who's calling him there?
Yeah, and once again, it was another thing where, it's because it's a comic book, you can't hear the voice. Mm-hmm. But
now, do you think that's Cy, or do you think that's
his other friends?
I think it's his other friends.
That's what I thought,
and he's
too.
just having trouble dealing with the fact that this is his reality and who he is, and he's lashing out against it.
Yeah, and it was funny because when...
and he's got that magazine on the bed.
Right.
Yeah.
There was just that nice little tie-in, and I was like, okay, because once again, I didn't think that was Cy at all. I figured immediately it had to be one of his little special friends. Now I didn't see exactly how deep they were going to go with this. I just figured it was just a normal, relationship type deal. But it was a nice way just to end off this first issue of this arc, because
you know what his demons are.
Yeah, it lets you know if you're really paying attention to him, and you know exactly what's going on with this dude.
Well, the magazine on the bed is an interesting framework too, because we see now that he was the one in the store buying the magazine. Yeah. I love that. As we're looking at this cover right here, I love Cassidy in the Batman shirt.
Yeah.
Just how cool was that? Because at the time, for me, this was early in my experiences with Vertigo. I'd been reading Sandman and stuff like that, but I'd really started delving into Vertigo with this series and started waking me up to a lot of what I was missing in Vertigo when this came out monthly. And I remember seeing that, and it made me feel like, wow, this is a DC book, and it's Vertigo, and they're honoring the, it's Batman book, and, part of this whole series, because I was just getting my head around Vertigo. Very cool Glenn Fabry cover, with the bar owner on the pool table and all that. Very fitting for these two.
Yeah.
Reaching melting point. Not sure we can make it.
Anyways, we're jumping into issue 6 here. This is a great example of code as well.
Yes.
The two are playing pool on a table next to the guy, and I didn't realize when I first read this who the guy was. I thought it was a guy they just randomly got into a fight with because he got mouthy.
Yeah.
Little did we know it's the bar owner. And really the whole issue is over the fact that he was making fun of the fact that Jesse wasn't from Texas for the most part, and Jesse's personality. It's Jesse is very much so a man's man, and if you try to question his ethics and who he is and try to imply that he's something lesser than what he is,
he's going to throw down with you, and he's going to drop you, and he does have that, that Texas redneck type, mess with me, I'm going to stomp your.
But don't you dare call him a redneck,
right? Yeah, don't and when I say redneck, I do mean it with respect towards anybody if we have listening, because I do, understand and associate and actually even kind of like that type, that style, that personality. It's not just a negative connotation anymore. It's more of a way of life. It's a code. And and you see that in Jesse right there. It's, you mess with him, you're going to get
walk around
stomped.
going, I have a redneck code.
Yeah. I don't think officially they realize
I'm going to
it.
say, because you're like sitting there saying, I don't mean redneck as, I think redneck is a derogatory term any way you cut it. I've never heard anyone use it affectionately.
Well, I don't know, because it's, one of the things with Jeff Foxworthy.
Oh, you happy redneck, you.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody does that.
all of us have a little bit of redneck in us. And that's the thing with, like the Jeff Foxworthy, you might be a redneck jokes. Mm-hmm. Everybody laughs because you can sit there and there's every certain jokes where you're like, okay, yeah, that's so-and-so. Oh, that's so-and-so. That's so-and-so. Now, they're not all from, southern states or from out west or, Eddie, they're from right here in Ohio. There's some of those jokes from like, okay, yeah, I know that person. That's my dad.
If I was making redneck jokes, I'm going to be honest with you, I would get beat up fast because I so clearly have very little bit of redneck. If you're talking about everybody has a little bit, then I have a minuscule
We all got
amount.
a little bit in us.
Right. So I don't mean it as an insult. I mean, people would get offended very fast if I did. That's what I'm saying. I think if you are in that category, what would be quote unquote in that category, you can probably get away with using that term.
Yeah.
I would not in a million years use that term. You shouldn't either.
Well, here's the thing. Here's my point. Cassidy could make a redneck joke to Jesse and
get away with it.
Yes.
Yeah. If you or I were in this photo, they'd run out of pool tables.
I think Jesse and I would be okay with it. I think he'd be okay with it because he'd realize, I got a little bit of neck in me as well.
I'd buy his beer when he puts you on the pool table.
Now that would probably help you out.
Yes.
He'd see you knock out your friend and go, hey, he had it coming. Here's a beer for you,
sir.
No,
I didn't say I'd knock you out. He'd knock you out.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I'd pay for his beer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That would get you in good with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, him knocking out your friend and then you buying him a beer saying, hey, he had it coming.
I have his tab.
Yeah.
I'd be the one he'd be telling to leave a tip.
Yeah.
And I love that bit with Cassidy because this is where we do see a distinction between the two code-wise. Cassidy admires Jesse, but Cassidy doesn't have that code. Cassidy would be just fine with leaving that guy. Yeah. He might even eat him, suck his blood or that type of thing. You don't know with Cassidy.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think so. Well, you know what? If it wasn't Jesse, he may take a little.
It is clear that Cassidy is careful on who.
Yeah.
I don't know if he always was, but do you think Cassidy's more careful around Jesse than he normally would be?
Big time.
Okay.
Because I think, when the first story arc, when he bit the one dude, he was like, what? He didn't think anything that it would be shocking, it would be upsetting. Now he's like, okay, there's a definite, I got to watch how I do it and when I do it.
I don't think he would normally care that people were offended and scared in front of him, but he does care how these people think of him.
Right.
And it's not just Jesse, it is Tulip.
Yeah.
Or Turnip. However you want to look at it. Now, Jesse comes back and gets to overhear, and we get to hear a little bit more. We know more than Jesse does at this point about what's going on with Tulip. But Jesse walks in and finally starts to, and I would be curious too. And that's kind of
That's the
That's the
definitely.
hard line when somebody who loves keeping a secret.
And you got a chance, you want to listen in, you're like, I shouldn't be doing this. And you can kind of tell he's like, I shouldn't be doing this, but I got to know.
And this could be relationship suicide right here. Because she knows that she catches on that he's listening in.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for the housekeeper walking by, he might have gotten away with it. But it is funny how these two, when they get together, I think what saves him is he's brutally honest with her about his feelings.
Yeah.
He is not afraid to, lay all the cards out on the line, because he stops things partway through and will tell her, you know what you want between the two of us, so why are you denying it? And she does not know how to react to that. You see the look that comes over, and I love that silent panel where she's just staring there.
And she's like, she knows he's right. And you're like,
right. But then gets angry because he's right.
Yeah.
And that's what that's all about. This isn't just this could be a male character, a female character, whatever. The roles could easily be reversed. That's very human right there. That's a very honest and genuine human response. Nobody wants the other person to have a one-up on them there, especially when you're in this tete-a-tete.
When you're in this weird relationship that's building, growing, / what it's going to be.
Relationships are a power struggle until you find a happy medium. And it is a truth.
Yeah, true.
I think the relationship becomes stronger when you find that happy medium, but you go through this roller coaster of one trying to have the power, the other trying to have the power, because you're vulnerable. It's part of the vulnerability of relationships. Now, where a relationship succeeds is when you get past that. But it is interesting. They're in the power struggle right now. Deep-rooted in the power struggle right now. Her more than Jesse even, although he's doing it as well. You see those John Wayne scenes and all that? He's playing his own little game and doing his own little dance. She's doing it as well. Both sides do it, but you got to get past it at some point. And it's interesting to watch these two. And you keep rooting for them to get past it because we all see it. We see them as something more.
Yeah, well, we're sitting back. We're the people going, come on, you two. You should be together. Right. This is what it should be. Come on, just both of you. And you want to just sit there and, yell at them, smack at them, go, hey, dumbass, think about this. This is it. This is a good thing here. As you're reading this, I want to yell at Jesse saying, hey, come on, dude, tell her. Mm-hmm. You guys sit down, have that talk, say what's going on. And
they're manipulating each other because they're scared and vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, they don't want it's as I said before, you don't want to get that look, that oh my God, you're a freak look. And this is because it's they're invested in this relationship. They never stopped caring about each other. That was very evident when she first sees him. You could see that they both were like, oh my God, you.
The honest human nature reality, though, is a lot of times when you wear your heart on your sleeve in a relationship first, and you're the one that totally gives in and starts, you'll a lot of times freak the other person out and scare them the other direction.
Oh God, yeah.
And it is hard because it becomes this song and dance that's human nature of when do we reach that common point where we're both feeling the same way and it's okay to let go. And we're guarded in relationships because of that, because we're afraid to get hurt. And that is, wow, I remember when this came out, I so ate this up.
Yeah, big time.
Because I'm like, I could so relate it to relationships I've had and my own dumb actions and things like that. And that's one of the things that makes this book so good. We talk about the extremes it goes to. The relationship between Tulip and Jesse, and I'm talking about in the quiet moments, not the events that surround them, but the relationship moments between the two of them are spot on, realistic. And that's why this book, I think, has developed such an affection by its readers, are the fact that around all this craziness, there's really deep-rooted, realistic character drama. Then we go to Bridges and Tool. Well, New York's finest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right now, every cop's going, oh, no.
I know, exactly. But we already know at this point that Bridges, the reason why Bridges is lashing out is because he's got his own secrets. And we know what they are. Like I remember when I read this issue, because at this point we already know what magazines he's got on his bed and that he's got a deep-rooted secret involved around this. And when he is sitting there and lashing out at people as he's looking at them, ought to organize a call.
Yeah.
And this is when I first started to suspect Cy of something. I didn't know what he was doing. Part of me thought Cy was initially on the phone because of the way he was looking on the two of them driving away. I remember first time reading this, trying to figure out what is Cy's deal, because it's too coincidental that he happens to be there at that moment.
I know. It was one of those things where when they introduced the character, I suspected him, and then I dismissed it. And then seeing him here again, I was like, what? And it was something weird. I kind of just like basically pushed it aside as figuring, okay, he's following the Reaver Cleaver story, so they're going there, so he's following them to get the leads. And I actually kind of was thinking it was a legitimate reasons he was there, because he was trying to get a lead on the story. And the way he was getting his information was by following them. And that was a justification I put in my head for him being there. I should have seen other reasoning, but, it was a nice... I was able to very quickly come up with a reason for him to be there.
Now, it is interesting when we take a look at Bridges here that, he does this mow you all down thing and things like that. It really is because, and where this ultimately goes with him, it's because he cannot accept that this is what he wants.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he ever could. Because you get the feeling that the guy that he's become, this super cop, this super macho guy, is probably because of how he was raised. And do you think he'll ever be able to get to the point where he'll be comfortable with who he really is?
By the end of the story, yes.
Did you think that he was comfortable at that point?
Well, see, he's interesting in that...
Because Toole makes an interesting observation about him, which we will talk about at the end, that I think Toole is pretty spot on. And I'm not talking about because of his choice in that he is obviously homosexual, he's got those tendencies and all that. I don't mean that. I think he really is messed up in the head.
Yeah. And it's part of his thing is he's not just homosexual, he's a sadomasochist. Masochist.
Right.
So, and that's even a whole nother, level to it. It's not just straight
he's that way
regular.
Because he can't deal with, though.
That's what came
why
first,
I'm saying.
chicken or the egg with him, and that's if it's the masochism, which is he's looking for the ultimate humiliation in his mind's eye, which would be homosexual behavior, or if he's a homosexual and doesn't know how to express it, so he's got to have this masochist to beat him down.
So do you think by the end he understands who he is? I'm not sure.
I think he starts to get who he is, and he's able to maybe even move on from it. But you see those final sequences of him where I'm like,
I took it as he left the Force in the end. I know we're jumping ahead, but I mean we can gloss over it quickly when we get to it at the end. But I do think it's an interesting point. At the end, I think we see him in a place where I think he ran away from being a police officer, because I think there comes a point where if you accept who you are, you do get back to a normal life of some sort. And I don't know that he ever reached that point.
Yes, he kind of went heavier into the masochism. Mm-hmm. He kind of heavier went into being the, to the whippings and all the freaky stuff. Because we see him in that mask and all that. And to me, that's not really going heavy into the homosexual lifestyle. If he could have been a regular homosexual cop and, and still stayed on the Force and still done everything he did, he just had to accept who he was, what he wanted.
And with him, I think it's more escapism.
Yeah, he kind of ran, and it's weird because we do say he's homosexual, but on one hand, I do wonder how much of it is homosexuality, how much of it is he wants to be humiliated, he wants to be beaten down.
Take the homosexuality out of it. I think at the end of this, if he was into females, we would be saying the same thing about him still being messed up at the end.
Yeah, he's still got issues.
Right. I don't think the homosexuality is why he's messed up. Well, it could be a symptom of it, in the sense he doesn't know how to deal with.
He doesn't know how to deal with who he is.
Right. So he's an interesting puzzle, Bridges.
Yeah, he's definitely,
I think, brought on by society.
Yeah,
especially society at this point. He would not be accepted. Today he wouldn't either, though. We made an interesting argument about that at the beginning. I think today that would be. It's still not at the point where it would be. There is no. Who do you talk to? A New York cop?
Yeah.
I mean, who are you going to talk to in this point?
He's in a tough position because of who he is, but he does run from it, and so he doesn't. Part of it, he maybe does accept it, and it's that's one of the things. It's hard to tell, but it kind of gives the image that he didn't accept it, that he just hid from it. He's still in hiding. Is what with the way it ends up with him all bound and gagged and all freaky stuff with the mask and whatnot. But I do
calling Toole.
Yeah, he's calling Toole, and he's talking to him while he's whatever they're doing to him. Who knows? So that's part of me wondering if there's a comfort he has with this life, and we can't really just see it. Or if he's still running and hiding. I don't know. We would need to see more action from him, whether he actually does accept who he is.
I almost wish that there had been more story with him and Toole, because I kind of wanted to see where they went. I mean, I understand why they stopped, because they aren't our main characters in the story and things like that. But this was interesting to me, and I don't remember if they appear later on. I don't think they do. It's been such a long time since I've read the whole series. I don't think they make a comeback in this. Yeah. There are characters that do.
Yeah.
reoccur, and they will. When I say reoccur, there's long stretches, but then they do appear again. I don't remember these two being those characters. Yeah, of course. Now, finally, the yuppie has discovered that he's a part of this, so they're talking about how they rank back up, and they're going to investigate this. And I love the girls hitting on Bridges. Bridges would be there's something sexy about his masculinity, and I can see that. He's that type of guy that would, for a girl, they'd latch onto that. But I love Tool. Talk about an unlucky guy. This would be one of us.
Yeah.
We'd be walking behind him. I'm like, I know I would do something dumb like this.
Yeah.
He drops his badge.
But not only just drops the badge.
Right into dog droppings.
Yeah. Right there in some little bit of poop.
Right. And that would be, and you see him wiping it off. And I loved the visual of this because it happens. You see him get clumsy in the first panel. It drops into there. And we've got him wiping it off, and he's talking matter-of-factly because he doesn't want to draw attention to any of it. Because he's an expert at
this type of stuff happening to him.
Absolutely.
And you just kind of blend into the background. He almost is doing the kind of whistling thing, Oh, nothing to see here, look away,
But it's one of those things where either if you're not dropping your badge in it, you stepped in it or something like that. We've all been there before.
Yeah.
And you try to come up with the casual way to wipe it on. I've had this before. You wipe it on the grass. You don't want anybody to know. And you hope that you wipe it off enough that there's no smell trailing you.
Yeah.
So I love this bit with Tool because we've been here before.
Big time. Hey.
So it's human, and I love this bit. Unfortunately for Tool, it's his day. We have a bad day, and this happens to us. Tool, this seems to be his every day throughout the day. Yeah. If anything can go wrong, he's walking Murphy's Law.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
You know what? I'd love to hang out with Tool, though.
Just because you'd seem so cool.
I'd follow behind him.
Yeah.
Because here'd be the trick is whatever could go wrong is going to happen to Tool, so you know to avoid it.
Yeah.
Anyway, back at the apartment, they walk in there, and Bridges is not a guy. Like, how he was, I'm with you here. All I was thinking when I was reading this guy would be so fired if he did this. He opens up that bag, and I knew when he opened up the bag, before we even got to that scene, he's showing her.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. And you're like, dude, what, are you nuts? And that was just this thing, I was just like, oh, man, come on.
Did you think that's what was in there? I thought it was the face.
I thought it was the face, too.
Yeah.
I honestly thought it was the face, but we find out it's not the face, and I'm just like, dude, this is the second time this has happened to somebody. Mm-hmm. Come on, enough with the, leave the firemen alone.
Wait, maybe these are Ragdoll's naughty bits. From Secret Six, it's his dowry.
There's Ragdoll's dowry. Mystery has been
Who would have known it was in Preacher all those years ago? Wow.
Now, I did like the fact that the lady did scream.
Yeah, I did
when
too.
they first approached, because she's like, "Oh my God, you're the Reaver Killer cops!" Oh, and then she immediately started freaking out when she sees them because she's seen them on the news. She's seen them, the story that these are the guys hunting down the Reaver Keep,
the task force,
Reaver Cleaver. Yeah,
leave it to Reaver.
Leave it to Reaver.
This is so awesome.
Dun, 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 dun.
Lord, stop playing with the Reaver.
Hey, don't fear the Reaver, man.
That's right. I got a funny we could go on for hours. With
Oh God, yeah.
Again with Jesse and Tulip, and throughout the series, these were always my favorite moments. You get to see the two of them have these deep emotional moments, walking down the street together, again dancing around the real subject. The things that the two of them really want to know, and we want to know. I wanted to know more than anything else what Jesse was hiding.
Yeah.
Why did he leave? Why would he leave? Because it's really clear that he loves this girl. This is the love of his life, and he's finally reconnected with her. And yet, we all know if he just tells her, it's going to bring them back together.
It'll be okay. It will be a good thing if he were to be just open and honest and tell her why. But it's this is the kind of conversation that anyone could have with someone. Now, not on the extreme level that they have where his secret, but everybody has that one little secret. When you're first starting out that you don't want to share. You don't want to say you're afraid to share it. And this is that moment.
And when you find true love, you're suave to that person you love. You have those moments. It is a guy thing where when you have that person, you're lucky enough that they find something about you. Because we've got tons of issues and quirks and things like that are part of just being a guy. But you're lucky enough when you find that girl, whether it's a girl that you're dating who happens to be into you, or you found her true love, whatever. There's something about you that will get that girl to smile, even in the dumbest things that you're doing. And I loved that moment with Jesse, where he's like, "Hey, you know something?" Because he's trying to dodge the bullet. You ain't smiled all day. You know that? How about smiling for me? Just once, just to remind me what it looks like. And you know he really did genuinely want to see it there, but he also wanted to dance around the subject, but he genuinely wanted to see it. And you see that little smirk from her and that little moment between the two of her, and she knows, she's like, he got to me. And that's got to frustrate her as well, because it goes back to that weird power play that we all have.
Yeah. I had a friend in college, and this was the line he used to use. And it sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. But he used to, he would go up to the girl and say, I bet you got a smile that could just light up the room. And if he'd get the girl to smile, he'd say, I guess I was wrong. And
what?
Yeah, I see,
no way.
It worked sometimes. It was the most amazing thing when he pulled it off.
What do you mean it worked?
She thought it was the funniest thing. Oh, you're so cute, like that kind of like playful, smacking around, and thought it was just the funniest thing in the world. Yeah, I don't know
how often did he get smacked.
A lot.
I was going to say
he had his even share of being smacked, but he had these moments
I could buy into the moment where there'd be a couple of girls with a good sense of humor that would really
get the joke and they think it's funny and like that's But
you got to catch a girl that's got a lot of confidence.
You got to catch the right
herself.
girl. You got to catch the right girl
and right sense of humor.
Yeah.
That's a bold. Props that he's got the bravery to do that. I'd never consider it.
Yeah, but when I read that sequence there, that was the first thought. That was the first thought that popped in my head. Of like, oh my god!
But he doesn't go there though.
No, he doesn't.
Right.
Well, that's what I was half expecting it because with Jesse's personality, I could see him. Maybe he could actually probably successfully pull it off with Tulip.
Now at this point. This is where I really began to realize that there was no way any of the police were involved in the killings.
Yeah.
Because the killer calls to speak to Toole, and Bridges is there, Toole's there, and, the killer's basically revealing that I've sent you, this mysterious care package of naughty bits, and the yuppie at this point, look how long the yuppie's been alive. Because this has been over a span of a few days in comic reading time. So he's been tortured. His face, we saw his face cut off. So
which is a hard thing to survive.
Yeah. So this guy's doing everything in his power to keep this guy alive and to torture him versus killing him. You got to wonder, does he want to be caught? Is he setting up a situation? And because we get to see where this eventually goes. Is he now laying out and hatching his plan at this point?
Yeah, that was the thing with a lot of serial killers. And one of the reasons they get caught is because they do get that cocky edge. They think, oh, I'm smarter than the cops. Look how smart I am. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, I can even prove how much smarter I am. I can give you guys clues.
And they want attention.
Ha, ha, ha.
Well, they also want attention.
And I loved seeing that in this, in this crook, in that, the serial killer that we're getting. It's
a game.
Yeah, it's a game to them, and that is something you see in a lot of legitimate serial killers. Now, you do have some that are psychotic.
Would want to play the medium.
Yes, and
the media this for him is good.
Yeah,
the more this is played, the better it is for him. It's an interesting line. I love that his phone's not tapped because nobody believes that anybody would ever
call him and
Toole's line with anything of any relevance or importance.
Now, here's the thing, though. This was another one of those things. I like that moment where he's like, take me, you idiot. This isn't a thing. It's not tapped. I did like that story element, but the reality is you call a police station, it's being traced and it's being recorded and it's, there's already, they would be able to track this down immediately. One, just subpoena phone records on incoming call. Boom. You see where it came through. Done. Two, there's probably is tracing, equipment already inside a police station. That's the thing. We're calling a police station. You don't want to prank call police stations or prank calls, federal agencies or anything like that because they can trace it back to you immediately.
Right.
So that's, but I put it aside because I liked how they explained it, how they even made it a point of him, the one guy, the one other officer just giving him the business saying, dude, you're not set up to be recorded. What are you talking about? We can't trace it.
We get to see right here that Jesse and Tulip go back and see Cassidy. I love these bits where he's getting ripped on left and right about being a tourist. But again, Cassidy kind of protesting too much. He can't say anything nice about the two of them having a moment together. Like, if it were True Friend, at that moment, and you knew what Jesse was going through, you kind of want to support. But that is an awkward moment for guys.
Yeah.
It is an awkward moment for guys when you're the third wheel. And Cassidy's very much the third wheel here.
Yeah, big time. But
we've all been here before. And how do you react? You never react in a way that helps your buddy. Am I right?
No.
Very rarely do you react in a way that helps your buddy. You always throw him under the bus, whether you want to or not.
It's kind of fun that way.
Yeah. But as they're talking about the Statue of Liberty and all that stuff right here, all of a sudden they find out that Cy knows now a lot more than they wanted Cy to know.
Yeah. And I liked how this came about, because Cy was asking any question that a reporter would ask. And had Cassidy kept lying to him or, pushing him away, it would have just made him more curious, and he would have found out on his own. It's better to be open, upfront, and honest. Lay down the story, tell him, now he didn't give him the full word. He didn't tell him about the word of God or any of that stuff.
Even though he felt that he could.
Yeah, but it's only given him enough so he doesn't continue looking on his own. You keep your friend in there, you keep him in the loop, you keep him knowing what he needs to know, because that's a good thing, because that was something I was glad to see, because Cy is a reporter. He does have those, the cognitive, just that, the inquiries, and just, you're looking for always more evidence, you're looking for more details. It's, a sign of a real reporter.
That can backfire, though. If you start giving him too much, they're giving him too general a story.
Yeah.
And he is going to have those natural instincts I would.
Yeah.
I'm not a reporter.
Yeah.
But I would have those instincts to want to know more, know that you're only giving me a little taste. I want to know all of it, tell me more. So it becomes kind of sometimes you start revealing too much. And they did here, actually. They were right to be concerned.
Yes.
Because Cy does use this information.
Yeah, a little bit against them, but I liked seeing how this played out, though.
Right.
That was a great, talk about just an awesome set.
I agree with you. Your comments about Cassidy, though, doing the right thing, I agree with. You had no choice here, because Cy would never have believed that, and they're risking, they needed, he's convinced that Cy can help them. So there comes a point where if you don't tell Cy enough, you're not going to get the kind of help that you need from Cy, and you risk losing that. Because he's like, you guys need this help. I'm trying to help you here. You got to trust me that I know what I'm doing. He doesn't know what Cy is.
Yeah, well, and you see just how long they've been friends. And
16. Cy was 16. They met at Woodstock.
Yeah, and I liked seeing this, because you see exactly why Cassidy is trusting Cy. When they get in, once again, it's, when Cy shows up at his place, you get a little bit more banter back and forth, just more of that good friend ribbing type stuff that just really puts me at ease with this guy. And then as he starts telling the story how they met. Cassidy just got his face blown off with a shotgun from a Hell's Angels at Woodstock. Cy took some bad acid and had just the world's worst trip as he's staring at Cassidy, who has half a face.
And Cassidy could have taken advantage of Cy in that situation.
Oh, big time.
So it does show us there that Cassidy has a certain code.
Yeah.
It's, he was, the guy that shot him, sure used that guy to...
yeah, he probably drained him.
But he could have also used Cy.
Yeah.
And just chose not to. Now, let me ask, with your experience with vampires, with him tripping, would that have been a deterrent for Cassidy to go after him?
I've read a couple stories where what the people did was, and it was actually a neat
with
thing.
Your experience with vampires, like you hang out with them on Tuesdays or something like
that. But no, I've read a lot of different stories where they've had drugs affect the vampires. And one of the stories, what they were doing...
Because it was in the bloodstream.
Because it was in the bloodstream. And it was a neat thing. They took... they gave all the vampire hunters, had to take a red and a blue pill together. Mm-hmm. Take as much as a blue as you want, but never take a red without taking the blue. And throughout the whole story, they're doing this, and you're like, what the hell, why? And then you find out later that the red is rat poisoning, and the blue is the antitoxin. So the antidote. So it doesn't kill... The rat poisoning doesn't kill them, but it puts it in their blood. And they show one time a vampire bites on the dude and spits out spits it because it's got that rat poisoning in there and can't drink the blood.
So they're tainting their own blood.
They're tainting their own blood, so it has a bad taste to it.
I like that.
Yeah, and
it's kind of cool.
So it could, and I've seen where other drugs, where people they don't drink the blood of junkies.
That's what I was asking, though. I guess my point is Cassidy really being noble here? Or was it that?
I think he was being noble.
I do too, because I think in this we've seen that. Yeah, we've seen certain rules for vampires don't really apply.
Yeah, I think he was okay to drink the blood. Yeah. I don't think it would have messed him up at all.
Right.
But it's still, I've seen stuff like that in stories, and that's kind of cool.
I like that as well. So anyway, I like this as Cy's trying to help him out. We get to see that he's really drawn into this whole thing, looking for real solutions and real clues for him, and having trouble finding it because he's in awe of the fact that Jesse really wants to find God. He's not looking at sightings. He's not looking for people who have, possibly had some kind of miracle experience or anything like that. He actually wants to find the real God.
Yeah.
That takes, for somebody who is interested in phenomenon like UFO and things like that, you're typically not looking for somebody that's like hanging with an alien. You're looking for somebody who's seen them, or somebody who's seen a flying saucer, or somebody who's seen a religious happening, with this case, because he tends to skirt through all kinds of supernatural and religious happenings. So he has an interest there as a hobby. So Cy is an interesting dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad where the story went because it was a great story. But part of me wishes he was, still around because he just would be a great addition to this team.
Yeah.
And just the whole conspiracy theorist, freaky UFO dude. He would have fit this team so well that I'm like,
Considering where the story goes, I got to be honest with you though. Adding a fourth to this crew of 3 would have been a mistake.
Oh, okay.
Because if you think about it, it really is about how these 3 interact with each other. Obviously Jesse and Tulip, how they interact with each other, but Cassidy, what he brings to the table. And there is something about Cassidy that he becomes incredibly compelling, just as compelling as the other 2 are. And these guys are thrown together by circumstance. And it is how their previous lives interact with their current lives and their future and where they're heading that makes it such an interesting relationship there. It is, I don't know. I'm with you on the characters I would have loved to follow. Any character in these 3 issues I would have loved to continue
on, yeah. Just to see what happens.
It's great character development because you make supporting cast that are just as interesting as your main characters, and that's when it's a compelling read. Because the events aren't just surface. The events are really deep here that are happening with these guys.
And how many times have we in this conversation said, I could see us having that conversation. I could see myself. And that is the strength of it. We keep saying how Preacher is about the extreme of people, but there are these realistic moments inside that extremity that, pulls you in and makes you want to know more. It's, the best part about a comic for me is when I start thinking beyond the page. And I start thinking, how would I act on this? What happened the next day? What about this? What about that? And this whole series has been about the next day for me. And if I was there, how would I have done this differently? What would I have done? How could you have, managed this? This is, it's, as we say, it's the characters, it's who they are, it's the where they're going and what could possibly happen. Just the unknown of how much of this is going to be used in the next story. How much of this is going to be used in a story arc, 3 arcs down.
The beauty of this whole thing is what Cy was doing here, though, was he was feeding Jesse just the things that Jesse wanted to hear.
Yeah.
The right amount of disbelief, but then yet I've got some things here that you really might be interested in. I don't know if it can help you, but here's somebody. I can't give you what you need because that would be too obvious.
Yeah.
Here, I know somebody called the Big Man who can.
Yeah.
I love when the Big Man turns up. It's so funny.
Yeah. Oh, God. Big Man was
just
awesome.
Putting everything into place right now. Cy was brilliant in laying this out.
And it's, when he initially called, before when the killer called, Tool earlier, it was, again, it could have been a, serial killer rant, or it could have been a beautiful setup.
Right.
And I took it, now we know it was a beautiful setup. And that shows, yes, Cy is touched in the head. He's out there.
Yeah.
Big time psychopath. But there is still some intelligence in there. There's still some intelligence in his planning and his execution and just who he is. So I'd like seeing that this isn't just a psycho, kind of crazy dude. This is a really good villain that, it pushes the heroes and makes them actually work for the victory. He's not just laying down and they're not just going to win because, oops, I made one simple mistake. No, they're going to have to do a couple stuff. They're going to have to improvise, adapt, and overcome to beat him. And that's always a great thing about a villain in a comic book story.
Right. Now, I love this bit. I'm consumed by inner turmoil. Cassidy burps and he comes back and goes, he's got it too. The comfort level that has been achieved in these issues between these characters. It's guys hanging out, guys joking together. It's a reality to it. But when he gets back with Tulip and they're in the cab and he's talking, it's Tulip's asleep, but he's kind of talking out loud, walking himself through it. There is a truth to this. Do you think you would find God in Jerusalem? Do you find God in Rome? Billy Graham, top of the mountain, obvious places that people would normally go and look? No. A blind man in Greenwich Village? Okay, maybe there's some reality there because you wouldn't expect it. It's, maybe there's some reality to all this. Let's find out. Let's play the game. And that's what I like about him. But he has this tender moment with her where she's sleeping. brushes her hair back a little bit just to look at her.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, the love story in this is very rich.
Yeah,
you know, and it does, you'd think in such a crazy, insane, violent book, you wouldn't get that, but it takes you through the full range of emotions, and it is why it's a classic.
We have definite tender just moments that is just kind of a cool thing.
If you read this book just on a surface level, you miss a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you could read like the first couple issues of this and really miss the point of this book. And there is a deep point aside all this craziness. Now, I love that Cy knows that Cassidy's going to stay here, and this gives him another opportunity.
Yeah.
And he
nice
sets
setup.
this whole thing
Beautiful
up.
Setup.
He knows that the guy right now, you know, has to stay indoors during the daytime. We've got the perfect opportunity here. I'm going to take your friends out. We're going to go look around. You stay in here. And, just some interesting moments. Because I didn't know at this point where this was going.
No, I didn't. And that was that's why I said it was just a wonderful setup.
Because, you know, right now we see a superior officer, the lieutenant, is basically reaming out Tool because Bridges isn't there. And she's all disappointed because she's like, I want Bridges here and I've got him. You know, and what a humiliating existence this guy has got. I felt for him here. Yeah, this whole sequence, I'm like, you know, he is basically a good guy. Probably very reliable.
Yeah.
He never turns up late to work. By the book kind of guy. If you tell him to turn in paperwork, he turns it in unless coffee gets spilled all over it. You know, I mean, you can count on Tool.
Yeah, and you can count, and he's also probably that good guy to have as a friend.
Probably 2 by the book.
Yeah, well, I'd say probably 2 by the book, but probably, I don't know. It's a.
And I'm not talking about as far as doing your job or following the rules, or I'm talking about. Probably plays life a little too safe.
Definitely plays life way too safe.
Too safe is probably a better term for the whole thing than 2 by the book. Because I'm not saying there's anything wrong with police officers who follow by the book. I think he probably plays life way too safe, and that gets him into a lot of. He's
sometimes
a very nervous fella.
Sometimes you got to take the risk. Sometimes you got to just jump out there.
Yeah, so
and you got to just do that.
I phrased that wrong, I think, but that's my overall. Now, of all the people to call. Of course, Cy knows. Let's call Tool. Let's play this game with Tool. Yes, it's me again. I'm sorry to note that Detective Bridges is ill today, but on the other hand, he won't be there to detract you from your moment of glory. I've come to a decision about what I've been doing, and I wanted you to be the first to know I'm at the ground floor apartment of 315 West 45th Street. And Detective, I've got a lot to say for myself. Bring a big SWAT team. Now, this is interesting because Cy is playing a game here and having a blast. Let's take the most useless one out of the batch and let him have a big day because I think it's funny.
Yeah.
And this is so totally a joke that he's playing on Tool.
But it ends up being a nice try. He is trying to cover for himself.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. Yeah. I agree. No, I'm saying, though, but it shows that he's taking it to a whole other level. Not only am I smarter than everybody else, look who I'm going to use.
Yeah, I'm going to use the cops against themselves, and it's just going to be a nice little, haha, I pulled the fast one on you. And it is part of that whole serial killer mentality where they do think they're better than the cops. They do think they're smarter, and it's not even just serial killer. It's a lot of criminals get caught for these exact reason. You know, they keep doing it, and part of it is kind of like a junkie chasing a high. You have that initial hit that is just this rush of energy, and you're like, yes! So you keep pursuing and chasing after the high, but it's never going to be the same as that first hit. So you got to do more. You got to, tweak up, instead of just doing, I'm not just going to, do a little weed. I'm going to do, let's throw some acid in it. Let's throw some of this. Let's throw some of that. And you're throwing in all the different types of drugs, and you're trying to get, that bigger high. And that's where you get a lot of these, celebrities and rock stars who OD because they're trying to chase that first high they had. Well, with the criminal, it's the same element. They have that high they got from the first killing. They got the high from that first torture. They got the high from that. Well, now they need more. So where are they going to get this other high? They're going to get it from playing their little games with the cops. And who's better? Hey, let's do, Officer Tool. He's a great guy to play games with. I'll have fun with this. Plus, I know where Bridges is. And I'm going to use it later on.
Oh, yeah.
This is a great thing. Look how smart I am.
And he's using it right now.
Yeah.
This is what we're seeing right here is he's driving them to the big man. Now, here's the funny part. He had accounted for the fact there was a possibility that one of them might stay in the car, meaning Tulip. But I think he was fully expecting either Tulip wasn't coming or Tulip was going with Jesse. Because Tulip being sick was not something that Cy was originally thinking.
Yeah.
He was expecting both of them to either go up or Tulip not to even be there.
Yeah.
So yet he knows in his head how to handle this situation, which was really interesting here because you're looking at this moment. Jesse's calling her to come, and that's what he would think would happen. I'll wait with Cy. I think I still need to sit for a while. And Cy has to deal with her.
Yeah.
Because if she sees this
Improvise,
going on,
adapt. Yeah.
she knows about Cy. Cy cannot be associated with this in any way, shape, or form. Other than it's a ramblings of a madman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's a question about vampires. We see Cassidy back at the apartment cooking eggs. Vampires don't eat, right?
Well,
or am I wrong?
Almost every story I've seen, they don't eat regular food.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there was one story where they could eat food, but it could only be like simple food or something. And it was like the older vampires, young vampires couldn't do it, but older vampires could. So there has been other stories where they do eat actual regular food.
It's not a criticism on my part.
So
it's more of, I was just curious about this. Is this something?
Yeah, traditional vampire lore.
No, right?
No.
Okay.
It's only blood. That's all they can drink, and that's all they can have.
And
but
Cassie doesn't fly or do some of the traditional things we normally expect with vampires either.
Yeah.
In what we've seen so far from him. So I mean, I was interested as I was following this one.
Yeah, I've seen, he actually kind of does fit some of the other stories where they don't have the whole supernatural thing going on, where they don't do the shape changing thing. It's like they have super healing. They're stronger than anybody else, and they don't get tired, and they can run at but they're not super speed. It's nothing like too extreme.
And they're fantastic characters anyway.
Right.
It's fantasy fiction, so it's interesting.
So you can do what you want with them.
I love. It's funny, this kitchen, as I'm looking at the kitchen sequence right now, the amount of detail in the artwork. I love how you can see right down to the details of the blinds and how well they're crafted, to the cracks in the tile.
Yeah.
To just the pans, and it's a outfitted kitchen. It looks like a bachelor pad, very much so. But I do love. I'm a big fan of scenery and mood as you're walking through. Cassie's walking into the other room though, and kind of finds out the hard way that Cy has some of the same hobbies that Tool does.
Yeah. Well, hey, Cassidy has some of those hobbies as well. He reads some of those freaky magazines.
Yeah. But he's sitting here as he's laughing about this, and he's like, "What is he doing with this?"
Yeah,
because but he finds the whole thing funny. He's not judging him. I guarantee you that if the guy comes in, the most he'll do is rag on him about it.
Yeah,
and he doesn't really care. He's still Cy to him, and probably knew the guy was a little bit odd and freaky.
A little bit. He's a little bit out there. So he's letting his freak flag fly. So that's I'm not. Who am I to judge? I drink people. So, I bite their faces off and drink their blood. Who am I to judge?
Do you think Cy expected Cassidy to find this?
Probably. Eventually maybe, or if not even just find it. He in his mind he planned. Yeah, it was too late. He already had him completely set up. He had him locked into his little
because he can't really go anywhere.
Yeah, I love the look on his face. It's like, oh no, as he opens up the fridge and he sees what's in the fridge.
Now I'm totally going to admit, it wasn't until this sequence where Cassidy, the first time reading it through, that I 100% knew what was going on here. It was this sequence with Cassidy where finally the dots connected with me.
Yeah, same here.
Because when I saw the magazine on the shelf, and then we see Cassidy's reaction opening up the fridge, I'm like, oh my god, it was Cy all along.
Yeah, I know. And
then I started paging back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was all right here.
Yeah.
And what is he doing to Jesse now, and all that? I really realized, I'm like, this guy is dirty through and through.
Yeah, that really made me
I was
wonder.
suspicious, but not...
Well, I honestly, I will fully admit, I thought it was him, and then I quickly dismissed it.
Mm-hmm.
I never, I had that initial think, he could be the killer. Oh, nah, he's not. He's okay. He's part of the crew. Yeah, he's going to, and then, as I said, he's going to be Oracle, and I had these ideas of him coming back in and out of the story when they need a little bit of information and stuff like that. But it was this sequence when he says, it's like, oh, wow, like, oh, no. And then as soon as you open the fridge, you go, oh my god, I'm thinking, okay, there's the face, or there's something not supposed to be there.
This bit with him and Tulip, even there, I'm like, boy, is this guy playing it well. Because they're sitting there and chatting, and he's talking about Cassidy having a girlfriend, and about how he had his own illusions about what Cassidy was, that he just used them for lunch versus actually having a real girlfriend. And, how that he would have the same urges that normal humans do. The only difference is he has limitations such as, sunlight blowing him up, but then he has super strength, all these other funny things. And it is interesting. The whole Snapple thing, I knew right away. I'm like, because at this point I was so determined by what Cassidy found in his fridge, I did not see the knife coming.
No. I knew he was the killer, but I didn't. I was actually thinking he was going to do kind of like, if you ever see the TV show Dexter, where he injects him with a tranquilizer.
Something like that.
I was thinking something checks her or cracks her on the head, knocks her unconscious. I was not thinking he'd take the big old knife, jam it right through her hand into the dash of the car. Oh, that was just, and the visual on that. He's got his eyes are lit up. He's like, hee. He's kind of got a giddy look to him, and she's got the what look. It is just a great full page spread of just a knife going through her hand, and I was like, wow.
Did you worry for Tulip here?
Not really, because I knew she was too strong of a character. I'm like, there's no way they can kill her.
I was reading this monthly. I'm like, are they going to kill Tulip? Or, is she going to lose a hand? Or what's going on? I was so... Because reading it monthly, I knew it was Jesse's story. Because it was called Preacher. I didn't know...
Yeah, now, I didn't know about, her losing a hand. Part of me was wondering, if maybe... if we were going to see a new element of the Word of God. I was thinking maybe she would die and he would be able to bring her back. Or something like that. I was kind of thinking that, but I never really thought that she would be gone from the series.
Yeah, I don't remember when I was reading it, but I knew I was worried about her at this point because I liked the character so much. I thought, please tell me you didn't build this girl up only to take her away from us. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, that would have been a little bit angry.
Yeah.
He is called Hawkman. His gauntlets possess awesome powers.
Jim, the final issue we're going to talk about this week is it's really the ending of this arc. And that cover...
Yeah.
I remember when I originally read it, I did not think it was who it was.
I was thinking it was, Psy.
Yeah.
I honestly was thinking, okay, that's, Psy. And that actually kind of threw me then going, but that doesn't kind of look like him. Why is he, but I just thought, okay, we'll see what happens, as this plays out. Because I was really, as I said, I'm so glad that I'm reading it the format I'm reading it, because I wouldn't have to wait a month. If I would have had to wait a month from the hand through the knife through the hand into the dash, wait a month for the next story, I would have been miffed. But because of the way I'm reading this, as soon as I read that, I flipped the next page and started on.
Yeah, and it's just such an awesome, awesome book. I do got to comment, if anybody doesn't have the hardcovers, if you're on the fence about grabbing them, I really love that there's a quote. Like, right when you flip the page behind the cover, there's worse to come, I'm afraid. This is really the production values of this hardcover. They're really nicely done. I really do like having the covers of each issue in between. I whether it's trades or hardcovers, I do want to comment on the fact that my personal thing is please always put the covers in. I'm a big fan of when the alternate covers are put in as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Please give me the complete collection with all of those. I love supplemental material if you're going to give sketch material, things like that. Like this ends off with some great sketch material. Not sketch material, full-blown artistic pieces from different artists who have done their own homages to Preacher, and those are wonderful. We'll talk about those on the last episode of this. But the production values of this hardcover set, I haven't seen a second one yet.
I know. I'm getting worried. I
can't imagine them not doing it.
The trades because I want to see if they're going to do the next hardcover.
Did you order Hitman?
Yes.
Okay, because the first 2 volumes, they're going to continue it and finish that up. Hitman's brilliant.
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
did
going to say
order
to anybody,
well.
if you really enjoyed this, something more rooted in the DC universe is Hitman, and it's the same kind of thrill ride as this is, rooted in the DCU. With a Hitman in the DC universe is great.
Well, I've read a couple stories with Hitman and stuff like that with Superman.
Was that the most recent re-release of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we get to finally see what he found in the fridge, and that was a great way to open it, because we needed to know at this point in time. And it's body parts that he has hanging out there by the beer. Why? Are these the things he's sending on to the police?
I was thinking...
Or is that there as a setup?
That's there as a setup. Pure as the pure setup, just, kind of, and once again, as I said, it's some great planning on Psy's part. Not just make the call from there to tell the police where to come, have actual evidence. You need to have something other than just this call to make sure, it's going to go, make sure they're going to believe he's the killer.
And it really is at this point where the police are calling him out, and he knows now, I'm in big trouble here. I need to do something and something fast. And this is somebody that he trusted. So he is totally
Oh, that's got to stink.
NYPD Blue.
Yeah.
Just such a funny, and that was at the height of that show that this was out, and wow, this is something because he has been very careful about keeping himself out of the sun. So realizing now that he's made the dumb mistake there as well.
He's completely trapped. It's daylight, so he can't go anywhere. He can't go out there. He'll burst into flames, and I love that. This is a set, is an awesome setup, but it wasn't just a setup for Cassidy. We then see that it was also a setup for Jesse, and I was like, dang, this is a good job on his part. I like this villain.
Now, I've got to say, this was the page where I knew who was on the other side.
Yeah.
The second that I heard that line of what's coming out of the room, I'm just like, oh my gosh, he's in there. Bridges is in there. Yeah. This is where he's been all along. The door opens up. I'm looking for the big man. This is one where I knew
who the big man was.
And they had set this up and broadcast it. I loved seeing this whole bit where Cy, the typical villain, reveals himself not a tulip.
Yeah, we do get the traditional villain's rant, and I liked how this played out, though. It went boom, 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 boom. It's jumping back and forth between the different actions. You first have, Cassidy going, oh God, and you got the cops, and then you got Jesse, now back to Cy, and it's going through, and it's just playing out all these things at once. It's kind of like it helps beef up the action, beef up the drama on what's going on, just as, just as Jesse opens the door, they go off to the next story. Then this goes on, they go out, and they jump back and forth. That is a layout of an issue that really was kind of cool for me, because it gets you right to the point where you're about to see something, then it changes it right back, and it gets it at rise and falling, like, oh, come on.
Now, he wants to torture her. It's become this is his
That's his MO.
Behavior.
His MO is torture. He enjoys that. We saw that, in the first issue with that yuppie where he skinned him and showed him, say, see, look at your face here. I got your nose, kind of thing.
So he's not as into the killing as he is the torture.
Yeah, it's the overall process. And
even revealing this to her and telling her all this is all a part of the mental torture.
It's all part of the game.
He's a sicko.
Yeah, and it could be, as I said, he's going after the next high. He needs to push the envelope. He needs to do a little bit more out of it. Probably his first couple kills, he probably just gutted them and killed them and done with it. And then as he's gone, it's like, hey, I want to see the reaction. Hey, beyond the reaction, hey, I'd like to torture him. This torture's fun. Let me play some games now. And it just slowly builds to this current psychotic level that he's doing it. And it's funny because I hate the villainous rant. I hate it with a passion. I loved it here. This was another one where I really enjoyed seeing it because he is an intelligent villain, but he's also a psychotic villain. Plus, he's also
there's a psychological reason to tell her, though.
And he's a torturer.
Because this is breaking her down mentally in his mind.
This is great torture. This is great torture to show that not only are you not my first, I've done this multiple times. And I will continue doing this after you are dead. And I just love seeing how he's got that style to him. It's a great way to break down, and it is a classic way to torture, break down your prisoners, or break down, you hear about with various concentration camps, various POW camps, where they did nasty stuff like this, where you just keep continuing the beat down of this character, the personality, the soul. You want to break their spirit, and then you break their body. Yeah. And that's what he's doing here, and that's why I was okay with this villainous rant, because it fit. It had more than just the stupid villain rant. This was a purpose behind what he was saying.
Cool. Amen. Now, when I said before that I saw Paulie being behind the door here, I did not see him necessarily being in this. I didn't know what to expect from what it was going to look like. And I love how this turned into panicked rage. And why I say panicked rage, this is something he's kept quiet into himself to protect his outside world. Now Jesse being there, this is an unknown quantity. Yeah. This is uncontrolled. What is this going to do to him? The real world has come crashing down into his fantasy world that he's created. Yeah. He's never dealt with the reality of what emotionally he might be going through. It's much easier to build up a fantasy and not really ever come to terms with who he really is. He doesn't know.
Yeah.
And at the end, that's why I said at the end of this, I question whether or not this guy knows who he is, because right here he clearly doesn't.
Yeah, he's into the pain stuff, and it's the and that's why I do say he's homosexual, but I do have questions whether he really is. It could just be deviant behavior, but I don't know. That's why,
because he doesn't. I don't think he knows. And I think that's what I'm saying. I think you're saying that I'm not sure what he is because we never see him have like an epiphany or come to terms with it or anything like that. These two guys, they're just two guys.
Yeah.
There is no relationship there with them other than the fact that it's a relationship of convenience.
Yeah, well, they're the dominants. They're domineering, and it's they like to smack people around. They get off on what they're doing to him.
Right.
Because it's very obvious. They're not doing traditional releases. This is all freaky beating him down and doing other stuff and that type of, activity against him. So that's why I say, I do say he's homosexual because I think he is, really. He just doesn't know how to express it. Probably, I can see this was a guy who kind of grew up probably in one of those households where, the dad wasn't that understanding or, you had to be the best. If you weren't the best, you were nothing kind of deal. So he's kind of got his own issues.
So he's either got daddy or mommy issues.
Yeah, daddy or mommy issues,
or maybe a little bit of both. Some of column A, some of column B.
He's definitely effed in the head. There's no way around that.
I would imagine the grandparents are probably involved on some level as well.
Maybe. So he's got these emotions, these feelings that he doesn't know what to do with, so he twists them around. So I'm like, how much of him is
Paulie Bridges on the next Dr. Phil?
Yeah. Yes. First off, take off the collar, relax,
I love this, though. Who's this? He's leaving.
Oh, yeah.
That would
I'm out the door.
It's kind of like, you know what? This is not me. I'm not finding God here.
Yeah.
And if you're God, I don't want to know, and my name is not Margaret.
I just got that. Oh my god, dude.
Time to go.
Outstanding. Well, that's an outstanding error.
But anyway, I do like Paulie's rage, very genuine there. But Jesse's temper is something that's going to come throughout the series. He's at this point, he's making jokes because what do you do in that situation? That felt very real. This is what they call deep cover. And yet, the second that he makes a slur about Jesse's background, that's Texas. He comes back with that. Jesse's rage gets the better of him every time. He's a proud man, sometimes too proud. And that proud temper gets him into trouble sometimes.
Yeah.
That's where this turned into a punching fight that it didn't need to. And Paulie's a tough dude.
Yeah, I like seeing that we still see Super Cop can throw down.
Absolutely.
Because he is this badass. He can fight, and he is, built and tough. So I like seeing that.
Now, we get back to Cassidy's whole situation, and that's one of the great things about this. This great cinema. Shifting from scene to scene in a nice pacing that keeps you just moving. There is no wasted motion in this book. And that is one of the keys of Preacher, has been all the way through. It just does not let up. Waiting for this book monthly was, oh my gosh. But I remember each issue I read multiple times because of this, because it was so fun just to go back through it and take a look at what was going on. And this is when he discovers that this guy had been there all along, the yuppie. That this place was set up in such a way, that room was probably soundproofed.
Yeah.
And there was no way that Cassidy would have known that this guy was in there. But I love that he puts the face on, but puts it on upside down, so the guy's looking through his own mouth.
Yeah.
With one eye. Talk about torturing a fella. How bad are you that you would torture a guy that way? And the guy's just begging for death.
Yeah. This is another one of those moments, man. I'd be like, if I came across that, I would actually be tempted to end it, because knowing just how nasty this guy's life is going to be, even if he lives.
And I agree with you 100%, but I think we would be in a similar place for Cassidy, as you'd be so in awe of the situation that you wouldn't know what to do at the moment.
Yeah, well, at the moment, if I was Cassidy, there's no way I would be thinking
but if I had
killing
a chance
the guy.
No,
if I'm talking like if I was one of the cops responding.
I'm not disputing you. What I mean is, if I had a chance to collect my thoughts, I would be totally with you.
Yeah.
Because is this guy ever going to have a normal life? Is he ever going to recover from this? No, you're doing him a favor. There's no way. How do you recover from this? This will be a psychological scar that this guy's gone through. I would be very tempted as well. I don't know if I could. I don't know that
I don't know if I could.
Yeah.
But it would be one of those things where I would
think it.
I would think it. And I basically do know. I don't think I could do it.
I couldn't either, I don't think.
I'm pretty confident that I'd say, "Hey, dude, I can't. Come on, you'll be okay, buddy. You can get through this. We'll be there. We got you covered." And as soon as I no way.
Yeah. I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I would not. That would be the hard part. Is I wouldn't know what to say or what to do. I would do it. What you said is probably word for word what the sentiment would be of what I would say, and nothing would feel like was enough. I'd probably be walking out talking to people saying the best thing that could happen to this guy is that he dies in the ambulance.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could bring myself to do it, though. My heart would be... I think there's too much compassion there. They'd be sitting there, how can you do that? Even if it would be a mercy to do it, I don't know if I could. It's the funny part is, just a couple of panels that I'm looking there saying to myself, what would I do? That's how deep this book gets.
Yeah. And then I was thinking, like, if I was Cassidy, what would I do? And I loved his solution.
It was the only choice that he had.
That was an absolutely brilliant way to get around this. And I was like, dang, that's why I like this character, because
Did you think he was going to kill the guy, though, when he did that?
What?
Like, when he was looking at those, did you think he was going to kill the guy?
I was initially thinking maybe he was going to end the guy's suffering. Or I was thinking maybe...
Or escape himself fighting.
Yeah, or... I never thought he was going to escape fighting. I was thinking maybe he would do like the kind of the Silence of the Lambs thing and make himself look like he's the, he was the yuppie, take the yuppie's face, put it over his.
Oh, wow.
That's what I was kind of thinking maybe he would do. But I didn't see himself, jamming the knife through his own throat.
Yeah,
and looking
I saw him somehow escaping this.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what that looked like. I was trying to figure out, what is he going to do to get out of this? I knew Cassidy was going to get away somehow.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. So I wasn't thinking to myself, geez, they're going to still think Cassidy's the killer. I knew somehow Cy was going to get busted. Yeah. I just didn't know what it looked like. So this was really interesting.
Yeah.
And Detective gets this case because he uncovered the killer's hideout. And, wow. Even at that point, it's almost backhanded from the cat. Now all you have to do is find the killer.
Yeah, you found this place. All you got to do is find him. And it was funny because this Tool actually starts showing that he's got some cop in him.
Yeah, I like that too.
There is something of there. He's not a complete and total loser because Tool is a detective, and to get a detective, you do have to pass the exams. You have to have been a police officer for a while. So there is moments in Tool's life where he wasn't a complete loser.
Well, and his putting two and two together, that now he knows about Cy Coltrane, and that if Coltrane was tailing us, because he was, he's starting to realize right now that this guy was on to us, he knew what we were doing, and Paulie could be in trouble.
Yeah, I like that. It showed him he's thinking a couple steps ahead. He's like, wait, I can't reach Paul. He's not sick. Oh my God, Cy's got to be there. Mm-hmm. So he's going to rescue and basically save his partner's life because he's thinking his partner's in danger. But he is a detective Tool, so he gets sideswiped by a truck,
and it ruins his radio. It ruins his radio. He can't call for backup. So there you go. Did you have any issue with him being unable to call for backup?
No.
Well, he did because he managed to. No, he managed to afterwards too. Yeah. To get backup call, because he even talked about it when he came in, that he got backup coming, but it wasn't going to get there fast enough.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Any police situation, it's usually the first call is backup and ambulance.
Right.
Especially any type of like this. So if there was never any call for backup, that's always
he did from a payphone, though.
Right. So he does do that. So I give him full credits for that.
I love Tulip's gun and how we got to see that play out slowly throughout this issue. That she had the gun in the purse, and that this impresses me to no end. Because the amount of pain she went through to pull that knife out.
Oh, yeah.
And it just goes to show this girl's been through pain before. And not only that, how much she loves Jesse.
Yeah, because she's doing that solely because she knows Jesse's in danger.
Right.
And now for me, I actually probably would have tried to pull out and kept the knife in the hand. Kept the knife through the hand and pull it off of the dash. And walk around with this knife sticking through my hand.
See, I wouldn't have.
Because the reason I would is because when you have, it's anything with like a stab wound or anything like that, when it's punctured in you, you don't pull it out. Because the blade itself is kind of like holding back the bloodstream. So by her,
you're 100% correct,
out,
and I'm not disputing you. I'm saying in that situation, I would do what Tulip did, though. Because I'd be too afraid having the knife sticking in me. I would do the dumb thing.
Yeah, and it's a common.
That's why I read real with you. You would be, and I'm not disputing that you would do that. I agree, you would, because you think that way. I wouldn't.
Right.
I'd be Tulip.
And it depends on like your training. If you've been taught this over and over again, don't pull it out. Don't pull it out.
And I haven't.
You know? So yeah.
Yeah. And I know it's true. Like when you're saying that, I'm like, no, Jim's 100% correct. That's right. I'm not disputing you. I just know in that situation, I'd be freaking out seeing a knife sticking in my hand.
Most people
like,
would.
That's got to go.
Yeah.
And that's my own humanity. I know I would pull the thing out, knowing, and I would probably rationalize too that I'm supposed to, but I'd be looking for something to wrap my hand up with, because I'd be like, I can't have a knife in my hand. You know, I mean, that would be that would be
kind of freaky. You know, going, oh, look at this.
Yeah. So
give your buddy a pat on the back. Oh, sorry, I forgot about the knife.
Right. But that's good. That's good. I like that. So we're back with Paulie, and wow, now Cy shows up. Things go from bad to worse.
Yeah, this was just a great, you see just Paulie's life just unraveling. And you can tell in his mind he's thinking, okay, everything I've known, everything I have ever had is now gone. You know, first off, I get this guy who I have no idea who he is seeing what's going on. I've now this reporter who sees what's going on. Like, oh my God, I'm done. I'm toast. That's it. There is no more me. And you see that kind of look on his face, and you're just like, yeah, dude, you're toast.
Is Toole really the unluckiest guy in the world? Because he shows up here with his gun now, too. You know, to apprehend this, you know, try to handle the situation. Sees what's going on with Paulie. Ends up slipping and falling. I don't want to know on what.
Yeah, I don't want to know.
Yeah, well, you know, use your own judgment. But every time he gets into these situations, somebody shows up to rescue him. So how unlucky really is he?
Yeah.
You know, Tulip shows up, and, you know, they have this moment right here. I loved the punch.
Yeah.
And it just shows how literal the word is.
Yeah. He punches him,
because that's a very common phrase to show up there. I don't think that's necessarily what Jesse was thinking.
He wasn't. I don't think he was thinking, you know, invoke the word and kill him.
Right.
That was, as you said, it's that Texas temper in him. He's gonna let that lash out. He's gonna let it fly. And he, you know, how many times have you told someone to die? You know, how many times? Oh, I wish you would die, and I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna beat your head into the ground. All the various, you know, nasty stuff you just say out of reflex. And plus, this was a guy who was attacking Tulip. This was a guy who hurt Tulip. This is, you know. There's just that pure rage in him that he unleashed on him. Now, I'm glad to see that Coltrane got killed. You know, but part of me so wished it would have been Cassidy who did it, because you know Cassidy would just unleash hell on this guy.
Oh, just for revenge on him?
Just on the pure revenge factor.
I like that Jesse did it, though, and how Jesse used the situation. He's recognized now, okay, I've killed him, and we get to see more with the word, which I think, you know, Jesse's the star. We need to know more about what Jesse's doing here. But I loved how he used the word here and set himself up in a situation where, okay, Toole, this is a great chance for you to be the hero of the day. Let's bump up your status, because this guy is the killer. He's taken down at this point in time. If someone's going to get credit for it, why me?
Yeah.
Why not you? And I need a favor in return. That's the brilliant part, because he's looking at this point and saying, I need right now some protection. I need to watch myself and all that. And whew, is this good?
Once again, we talk about Jesse's code. He's not just going to have him do something just to do it. He's going to give you a little something in return. For helping me out, you're going to become a hero. For helping me out, you're going to be the one who captured and brought down this serial killer. Congratulations. And I thought that was just a great thing, especially when we see beyond what he was giving him. He wasn't just giving him his free. He wasn't just getting him away from this situation. He was protecting the future stuff from, you know, with going back, and it was just a nice long-term plan that Jesse had. And I loved seeing how it played out.
This part with and this is the part where I really question: is Paulie homosexual? Is he messed in the head? I actually agree with Toole here. I don't know if this means that he's much of anything other than just doesn't know what he wants. Because I mean, if you're somebody who's homosexual or heterosexual, whatever, you reach this epiphany where you realize that's who you are.
Yeah.
He has reached no epiphany here. He's just shouting it out there. And the way he's saying it, I think, you know, it's like he's not coming to a conclusion. He's not sure. He's crying about it and all that. It is an interesting exploration here of the deviance of humanity, which has nothing to do with preference.
Yeah, and it's why I do say he is, but I'm like, I always wonder, you know, is he just, you know, a little bit of a freak?
He could be, but who knows? He does. I don't think he does not know right now.
He doesn't know who he is and what he wants.
That's why I said by the end, I don't think he knows. It's just it's an interesting character study on our society in general. That's why I said it could have been females just as well.
Yeah.
Doing this with him, and I don't know we would have had any better conclusion for him at the end.
Yeah, see, it's, I don't know. That final scene when he's sitting there on his knees and just crying, and you have that white background, and, you see Tool just actually looking like the stronger of the two, and, for me, it was kind of like, I'm thinking in his mind right there, he was coming to grips with who he was. It was that, sometimes you need that good cry. Sometimes you just need that emotional outpouring, and then you're able to think clearly. You're able to become, follow up. And that's why part of me thinks...
I think Tool's epiphany here, though, is the world's a screwed up place.
Yeah.
This was the guy I looked up to. This was the guy who I wished I could be, and now, woof. I think what it is Tool's accepted more of who he is as a person. And I think he's the only one at the end of this.
In the end, he's the only one who really knows who he is.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
This Cassidy bit is so funny.
Yeah, great. Hiding out in the morgue. Is the sun down yet? Yeah, okay. That, I tell you, that has to be one of the biggest fears anybody who works in the morgue. Now, people aren't just going to rise up on a daily basis. It's not going to happen in the real world, but that's got to be something you got to be a little bit freaked out about. You got to just wonder, what would I do? Or that thought has to pop in your head.
Too funny. Then finally Tool comes up and explains to Jesse about the grandmother. And this is a nice little prelude to where things are going.
I know. I love that. Just seeing, but also just what Jesse had Tool do. Tool calls the feds, back in Texas saying, hey, we found a body, matched your dental plan, matched the dental, record.
Matched your dental plan.
Yeah. I was hoping you'd let that slide. Hey, he's got HMO. Okay.
Yeah. So we knew it was him because we had his card too, and
but matched the dental.
His Blue Cross matched it, and what coverage he had.
But it was a great way for Jesse to just kind of get some of the heat off of him. But that look on his face when he mentions Grandma. Was just absolutely wonderful, and it was another thing.
Brilliant setup.
Yeah, brilliant setup, and we know there was the grandma mentioning earlier in the first issue, at the ending of the first arc, where they talked about they showed the different things to come. They talked about the grandma, so I was like, okay, we got something definitely going on here. This is going to be an interesting thing.
I remember reading this for the first time. We go to the Blarney Stone. I was worried that Cassidy was being written out. There's part of me that was hoping that they would hook up again at some point, but I'm like, what do you mean you're taking Cassidy out? I love Cassidy in this. Cassidy should be monthly. And but I appreciate the fact with everything that went on around them, Cassidy's like, okay, I need a little distance right now. I need to kind of regroup myself. This is just a little bit too messed up. For Cassidy to say it's messed up. Well,
you look and you figure out his good friend, Cy, not only set him up, set Jesse up, hurt Tulip. So this is, he's got to
be uncomfortable.
He's got to figure out what's going on because he has to feel guilty.
How would you be comfortable around these people, and how would you trust someone? I thought I knew Cy. Yeah. Do I really know you? Do you really know me?
Yeah, I kind of took it. The uncomfortable he was feeling was the fact that all this nasty stuff happened to them because of him.
But that's what I'm saying, though. It would naturally put those. Is Jesse questioning me now if Cy did all this and all that? So it makes you. Not only do you feel responsible, but now becomes major trust issues in any friendship in this case.
But though the cool thing as they're playing throughout it, when they do finally part, you can see the look in Cassie's face and okay, no, he still trusts me. We're still buds.
And that shows the opportunity for them to regroup and get back together again later. I loved seeing, though, these kind of conclusions about John Toole and seeing that Bridges still calls him.
Loses both his arms.
I love this bit with Cassidy, going back and making visits of some old stomping grounds where he likes to rile things up a little bit. And Jesse and Tulip kind of driving away together and just having this moment, which I thought, okay, maybe finally we're going to see the two of them get together. I had no idea
where this was going to go.
And I agree with you that we need to save the next issue because it's going to be
that whole arc, and that's going to be a massive one, and it's going to be a fun ride.
It'll be 1 week. It'll be 1 week or 2 weeks, depending on what everything looks like. Because I want us to take a really good look at some of the other things in the universe. Because we've been away from Batman, Superman. There's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Wonder Woman, Secret
Justice League,
Six.
yeah, all that stuff. I'm with you. So I think that might take a couple episodes for us to do and then come back to Preacher.
Yeah.
Because I want to stay caught up with the current material as well. Some of the stuff outside of Blackest Night, I'd like to chat about.
There's stuff outside of Blackest Night?
There is, yeah. So I don't know. This has been, I hope for all of you that are, if this is your first experience with Preacher, that this episode's giving you, this series of episodes is giving you what you were looking for on this, because it's been fun for us to chat about.
I know. This has been just, I'm so glad that you talked me into picking up Preacher. This is one of those things that I was like, yes, Sean said I would love this, and he was right.
Yeah.
This was one of those spot on, just, wow.
They keep rumoring this as a series, and God, I hope they do.
Yeah.
Nothing like the handy-dandy electro claw for carving through metal doors.
Jim, I want to make sure before it gets too late. When we did the Vigilante Challenge, we had no idea the book was going to be canceled. We talked about it a while ago. It was a book that we both liked, and I totally missed, I don't know if this is published somewhere, we talked about this last episode, had no idea this book was going to be canceled with issue 12. So we did 11 as a challenge, and I do want to talk about this book because it's a series that, if you liked 11, I recommend going back and reading the whole thing because it's well worth seeing how it got to this point and issue 12 with it wrapping up. I was sad to see this series end because it was clear with issue 12 that it was kind of, the ending was neatly wrapped up in such a way.
It could come back.
Right, but it was also neatly wrapped up in a way that it wasn't intended to be.
Right.
With where it went. But I want to talk about issue number 11 because it is a good single one-shot issue. The writer is Marv Wolfman. The artists are Walter Simonson and John Paul Leone. Letterer is Steve Wands. Colorist David Barron. Associate editor, Harvey Richards. And editor is Michael Siglain. This is a book, like I said, I've been really enjoying this. The mystery of not only who the new Vigilante is, but what is motivating this character. This spun out of Nightwing, and while I was kind of interested in the character there, it really wasn't until the solo series that I began to really care about this character. That first issue started to get me hooked. I think in Nightwing, I was more focused on Dick Grayson, while this book had given me a chance to really get pulled into the world of Vigilante. Where did your interest begin in this character, Jim? Were you interested when he was in Nightwing, or?
Yeah, actually, okay. I remember reading some of the other Vigilante story arc. You know, back when the day when this was first out. Vigilante is one of the titles I used to borrow from my one friend.
So the original Vigilante, the brother.
The original Vigilante. I read that series almost throughout the entire beginning to end of it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was another title that I used to borrow. So I really liked the whole action, the gunplay, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of neat. This is a hero who kills. Oh, yeah, that kind of
So you've actually read more Vigilante than I have.
Maybe.
Because I've read good portions of the other series, but a lot of times it was where it crossed over, because it did cross over into other books. And I did read arcs of the solo series, but I certainly didn't read the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to say I read the whole thing, but I did read a good chunk of it, and up through, when he was a period where he became a judge, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, up through there is where I read it through, and that was kind of near the ending of when I read it. Stopped reading it. But, so I had a good solid knowledge of who Vigilante was. I was glad. And then with the relaunch, I was like, okay, this is a new Vigilante, kind of curious, same MO, same style to it. And as his first appearance in Nightwing, I'm like, okay, yeah, Nightwing, Vigilante, this should be a good fight down because they're both similar type things. They're both non-metas. And then when you had the whole Titans crossover, I was like, yeah, I like this guy because I started seeing the Team Vigilante aspect once again. I'm like, hey, that's the same guy. Okay, yeah. Oh, cool. This is kind of cool. I like seeing that team concept. And then when it, throughout this, solo series was just a fun read. I loved issue 11 because this was a great jumping on point because it wasn't just about Vigilante, it was about the supporting characters. They're introducing a new supporting character who I really thought was going to be some nice stuff going on.
And even if that character didn't go anywhere, seeing the Vigilante through the eyes of that character was a great way to give us kind of an idea of who Vigilante is. The issue kicks off with a guy named Jerry asking for a favor from Bobby Cooper, managing editor of a paper. And it's a nice teaser to where the story ultimately leads later. I'm a fan of splash pages that tease a story, but also leave you wondering how it all fits. So then there's this flash to Venice. This book is all about visual mood and style for me. It is something I've liked all the way through. And I love that this book has a unique film quality that I don't get elsewhere. It feels old crime noir. I don't know if that label fits 100% right to me because I do feel like it's got its own flavor as well, but there are certainly film elements at work here that I enjoy.
And this is one thing that coloring I love
yeah.
They don't use flesh tones that much. There are periods where there's going to be the flesh tones on the faces, but a lot of times the flesh will have different color tinting, and it's based on their emotional or their dealings or the reactionary of what's going on around
Or
them.
location
Too. Yeah, and it's so I love seeing that.
Light sourcing.
But it's you see them having like the redder faces or the purplish faces, and it's not, and it didn't throw me off like saying, why does this guy have a purple face? No, I could see that it's emotional aspects behind it, or the lighting. It was darkness. It was a little bit shady. That is something. You talk about artwork. That was the thing that sold me on this book. I liked the fact that I had this one book that had this particular style, had this feel to it.
Sharp contrast to the bright pop of JSA, for example.
Right.
Which is a book that's another book I want to talk about next week.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying it might take us 2 weeks to get through all the stuff that we want to talk about, because I do want to talk about the things going on in JSA as well. But it's interesting to see these are bright, popping color hero, stories.
Dun, da, da.
Yeah, and this coloring mood and tone fits here. Jerry and his girl are on a romantic trip, and we get a glimpse into his world. He's a newspaper guy without a story to tell. He's there for like this new job, but circumstance and the story he always wanted come crashing down around him at the wrong time. Imagine having the story of the year, the reason to write, but having to lose everything to get it. Is the job worth it? And it was,
Well, you think about when we had that first preacher conversation. We were talking about would we have gone when you see that big mushroom cloud, and Tulip and Cassidy Tulip goes to investigate, takes Cassidy's truck. We kept throwing around, would you go? I don't know. The one thing that you said, that really flashed in my head when this was, if Mariah was with you, there's no way you would have gone unless she was really pushing you to go. But with Jerry, he hears gunshots. So what's he do? Hey, let me take my girlfriend or my wife and go investigate. Like, dude, I am
old school that way.
Yeah.
I do know that about myself. I would not, unless she was really pushing.
Right.
And honestly, my wife probably would.
She probably, yeah. She's a bit of action and adventure on her own. So she probably would want to see it. But this was very clearly she didn't want to go.
No.
And I loved seeing it. And in a way, I hate saying, serves you right, buddy, because it's a tragedy to lose someone you love. And I don't wish that upon anybody. But when this played out, I was like, I saw it coming. And I was like, okay.
And see, I wouldn't say that because that would be wrong.
Well.
Vigilante was fighting some criminals, and he had a front row seat, the exclusive. The girlfriend is taken hostage, and Vigilante shoots the terrorist in the standoff. It looks like he takes out the girl in the crossfire, and this sets up much of Jerry's obsession from here on out. And that was a great art sequence of Jerry doing research, but then ultimately locking himself away to get as much as he can into his obsession. The hair growing long, not caring about his appearance were nice details that set the tone. That was something that was really great as the story unfolded. We got to see a guy gradually change over time to match his own change.
Yeah. Now, the one thing that got to me was, one, they used the shoot the hostage line, like we saw in Speed, because when Vigilante shoots the bad guy, shoots right through her shoulder and kills him that way.
Right.
And she's lying in the boyfriend's arm, lying in Jerry's arms from this it was a nasty shot, but it wasn't life-threatening, and she gets hit with another round while she's in his arms. I ate that up as a story element. It's like that, everything's going to be okay, honey. Well, guess what? No, she's not. I shouldn't chuckle. I shouldn't laugh. But it kind of, in a sick, twisted sort of way, it did make me chuckle. Just seeing that, he's sitting there and he brought this all on her. And I shouldn't be enjoying it, but I kind of do. I don't know.
You're one of those people that just love seeing kids hurt in America's Funniest Home Videos, don't you?
I enjoy seeing more of the adults getting hurt in America's Funniest Home Videos. I'm the guy who cracks up every time the little kid with the wiffle ball bat hits the dad in the coolie eyes.
I gotta admit, I do too.
I cheer with those.
That I'll agree with.
But the skater videos where they're trying to ride a rail and they split it, and I don't like those as much because it's kids getting hurt. I don't like seeing kids get hurt, but adults doing stupid stuff like the dad trying to imitate what the kid's doing.
A girl getting shot because she's in the wrong place.
Right.
I love the use of the internet to try and find information. To sort through drawings of this legend, descriptions of him would be sketchy with no real evidence at this stage, so the police reaction fits, that he's having these difficulties trying to get concrete evidence. We flashed to Amsterdam 3 years ago, and I love how it's gradually building towards present day.
Yeah.
A year has passed, and it shows on Jerry. He takes odd jobs like a tour guide to make ends meet. We learned Casey is his girlfriend's name. We didn't know this up until this point, so we're gradually learning more about his world. Dummy me, this is the cool bit where we find out Vigilante was at the table when he approached the gang. I totally didn't catch that, and it was great. Now, when the gang debates letting Jerry help out and Vigilante and civilian guy says, I don't trust him, I say no, did you take this as Vigilante trying to save his life?
Yes. Vigilante definitely didn't want the guy in on this because he knew it was about to get nasty. He knew he'd have to kill them all, but this guy wasn't a bad guy.
And maybe understanding where Jerry was coming from because of his own loss that has been alluded to since the beginning of the series. Maybe his responsibility for his own loss connected with Jerry's subconscious guilt? I don't know, because I still, it's an interesting mystery of the series is how much was he really responsible for the, Vigilante I'm talking about, for the death of his wife that there was so alluded to. I don't know. It's interesting. I love this because this series actually makes me want to get into the heads of the characters, which is a testament to what I enjoy in a comic. And that is something that I've liked all the way through. I've wanted to know motivations. What is making this person do this? Why? He seemingly doesn't seem to care much about others other than his mission, but then he shows that he does, and why? What is it that he's connecting with? The diamond heist with the gang was a great action sequence. I love that Vigilante is just a man. Eddie Huang is back from the start of the series as the gang leader who Vigilante winds up using as an uneasy source. Vigilante lets the other guys go, but then appears to detain Jerry. And do you think, once again, trying to get Jerry out of this?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I'm giving you every opportunity here. Get out of this world.
Yeah, I honestly 100% believe that this was V's chance to try to, make things better for him. And I don't think he felt any responsibility for Jerry.
No, I don't mean it that way.
But he did feel some, there is partially the good guy in him that he knows this is not a bad guy. I'm killing bad guys. I'm taking out the mob. I'm taking out Eddie. I'm taking out his forces. This is not a bad guy. This wouldn't be like killing an innocent, even though
you're not my target.
Yeah, he's not the target.
He's overtaken and loses his mask, and Jerry now knows that Vigilante was in the meeting with him as a part of the gang. Jerry finally gets his one-on-one confrontation and is awestruck. Vigilante tells him to get the story elsewhere. He recognizes that this guy is in over his head, and I'm not sure he remembers him yet at this point. That he's made the connection with
who he is?
Yeah.
I think he did.
Did you really? Because the way he was talking to him, it seemed like at this point, until Jerry brought it up, then he denies killing the girlfriend, because Jerry had to remind him about that. He didn't make the connection right away, because he denies killing the girlfriend when Jerry brings it up, and I wasn't sure from the original scene if it was him or some stray fire.
Oh, no, I knew that wasn't. Yeah.
I love the way... No, what I'm saying, though, is I love the way that visually, if you look back at the original scene, you cannot tell visually...
Yeah, initially you can't tell.
What happened.
Yeah.
It sets up a nice mystery. I agree with you that I didn't think it was him either.
Right.
He's too professional for that, but I liked that mystery build, and you could see why we didn't see it, so why would Jerry think it?
Yeah.
We flashed to Brussels 2 years ago, again, coming closer to present day, and it's revealed that the bullet was from a different gun. So Jerry did follow up on this. This is kind of cool because the closer Jerry gets, he fills in our gaps with Eddie Huang and starts to lead us up to the start of the series. So we're seeing now a prelude to what we've already seen from the previous issues. But it's a nice way to kind of give everyone an overview of what Vigilante's world is like. PR for a mob boss's legit front. Hired by a man named Harry Willis who became his superior. This is a tough job, having to put a positive spin on unpopular happenings like layoffs. But for him, none of that mattered if he solved this mystery. So, it was worth being put in these awkward positions. Now, here's a huge problem. He knows Vigilante's face, but finds out the man he was posing as is dead. He now knows that he can assume different faces, a la the movie Face Off. So this is how he blends in on the civilian level. He's learning what we've learned throughout the series as well. The guy he was posing as was murdered by his wife. He was a contract killer out of Poland. So now what? Who is this guy really? Now, this tells you how crazy it gets. The guy Jerry was working for turns out to be the vigilante in disguise, using the position to take Eddie down again. So those meetings he was having were actually with the vigilante. Not only that, he issues Jerry another warning with a bullet wound this time. Go back home, or next time I'll kill you. And that was a moment where I was just like, whoa!
A nice little gut shot kind of to slow him down. I really ate up the fact that when Jerry realizes this is the guy I've been meeting with, the guy I've had multiple meetings with, I've had multiple encounters with, he's a vigilante. What? And I ate that up because that's something we kept seeing throughout the series, and it just comes into play during this one issue and brings the character up to speed. That was, really a cool moment that, it's a classic vigilante stuff that we've seen, but, brought to present day.
Now he's in the hospital, and right away, Vigilante's in there. He was here in New York. He was right here. And those bits, just totally crazy, because we just see this great action sequence, which is a trademark of Vigilante. I love the way the action sequences play out between Vigilante...
And Vigilante calls him out on the whole thing with his girlfriend. And I love the fact that he threw it at his face saying, hey, you heard gunshots. Most people run away from them. What do? You run in, and not only that, you bring your girlfriend into the mix. And I was like, yes, thank you for someone, throwing that in his face, because there is a little bit of that in him. He does have to take some of the heat for that. Now, the one thing I'm wondering, now the crash into the room, was that a coincidence, or were those Eddie's guys coming to kill the reporter because they realized who he was?
I don't know. I didn't look at it that way, but I can see your point.
Because I kind of took it that maybe that's what was going on, and V was there to save his life.
Maybe. They realized that he got too close and his true identity has been compromised there. I don't know.
Or, I don't know.
It is interesting, though, when he talks about him, that I never left your side since Belgium. And the connection there, and I think this is where V was trying to protect him, was in the sense that, why are you after them? Did they kill your wife like they killed Casey? Did they murder your son? Did they kill someone you loved? No, they didn't. I did. And in many ways, this is like, the reporter's got to have the realization that he's partially responsible for what happened to her, something he's never accepted.
Yeah.
And I thought that's where maybe on a subconscious level, Vigilante was connecting with this guy. And, So, he gets hired as a reporter basically to follow Vigilante. I do think you're right. The intention was to have him pop up every so often.
Yeah, he was going to be a constant run-through and all that. So
I so wish this series had gone beyond the 12 issues.
I wish it had survived and just, continued on, because that was a great layout and a great starting point, a jump-on point for the, for future story arcs. And that was, now, when 12 came out, it kind of like had the end type of, not the end type question mark at the end. So who knows if it may have a chance of coming back. But I recommend anyone pick up 11 and 12, read these 2 issues, read them. It's a good story.
And seek out the rest of it,
though. Seek out this series. This is a good read. This is a nice, collection. If you're looking for a good, action adventure type, a little bit different look to it, as we said, they use that film noir, crime noir type style with the coloring. It's not your traditional looking comic book. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about this. And I'm really sad to see go, because I like it's, I want to say, I don't want to just say palate cleanser, but it is just it's a different variation on a really good story that I'm used to getting. So it's a nice way to present it.
He's not a superhero.
Yeah.
By any stretch of the word.
No, he's more of the villain, if you will, but he's the villain who only kills other villains.
Right.
So it's a nice little thing that it's a cool story arc, and it's something that, to be honest, you think about it, a lot of people have said, that, hey, wish Batman would, be a little bit rougher. Batman would kill. I like the Punisher. This is kind of like a Punisher type, but I don't even want to say he's a Punisher, because the Punisher has his own storylines, his own story arcs that he's dealing with. Vigilante has his own little demons that he, starts exposing and what's going on there.
Yeah, it's an interesting book. I'm sad to see it go. And I'm hoping he gets a co-feature somewhere or something else.
Yeah, he would be a great co-feature.
I think so as well. I think he'd do very well as a co-feature. So I'm hoping that this is a character they give another shot in a different format if it didn't work as a solo series. Because I love co-features for just that reason. A lot of these books that aren't working as main series do work well as co-features. And this is a guy I'd love to follow. I want to talk about the Batman Widening Gyre just casually about issues 2 and 3. We don't have a lot of time to kind of go heavy in depth into it, but I'm really enjoying this book. And it was funny, I enjoyed issue 1, but it really was 2 and 3 where things started to get interesting for me. Silver St. Cloud comes back into Bruce's life, and this is a nice follow-up to the classic Englehart Rogers stories, which I really liked those. So this for me, I'm like, ooh, yes. Her outlook on life as a socialite party girl has changed due to her responsibility to her deceased husband. Although that was a very complicated relationship in and of itself. It wasn't.
It wasn't a love affair. It was,
She respected him, but she wasn't in love with him. And there's an interesting distinction there because the true love of her life is Bruce.
Dee Dee.
Yeah, exactly. Because she's leading a quiet life, she's really started to miss Bruce. She has known his secret for years, I should say, and ultimately, his sense of duty is what came between them. She seems to have a change of heart and is willing to fit into his life in a way that doesn't affect his role as Batman. And my senses are tingling on her all the way through this. Kind of a life is too short and I will take what I can get kind of thing. It sounds great and seems to work. The two spend their days together on a private beach. Bruce flies out at night to take on his role as Batman. The art's fantastic as Silver's quite sexy, but not over the top as she has a classy look to her. She also looks like she's aged from her last experience, and I don't mean this as a negative. She looks like she's matured and it actually adds a classy level to her appearance, which was something that I thought was interesting. I'm not saying she looks old. I'm just saying that, there's a maturity there. She's still incredibly beautiful, but I appreciate the choice to have her appearance match her change in apparent attitude towards her life. Of course, I left out that there's a new mask running around Gotham. This person, notice I'm leaving out the gender because I'm not quite sure here.
You're thinking that the same thing I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems content to help out Batman. Apparently comes from another city. Seems confident and cocky, but also respectful of his role. This person has taken on the appearance of a goat from historical mythology and even chose a name to try and intimidate a la Batman.
Yeah, he's definitely, I won't say key, but I'm not sure, went with the intimidation scare tactics that Batman uses, and I like their first initial meeting. Mm-hmm. When they actually had that sit down and they're talking, and Bat's like, hey, don't turn. You do, I'm coming after you. Don't cross the line. He's like, hey, no problem, I got that covered. But it was the interesting thing, the mentioning of the crossbow. That goat dude. I can't remember what the actual goat dude's name is.
I don't either. But
yeah.
You're talking about the relationship with Huntress? Talking about how Huntress uses that bow and...
Well, I was actually... that is one, but two... Talking about... Because Batman looks at it as like, this is an antique. Very expensive. So right there, that for me is a clue as to, money. This person has to have some money. So we're dealing with another very similar style to Bruce Wayne.
Or being backed by someone.
Right.
With that, because that's my other theory.
Oh, okay, yeah. Possibly as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I'm still not sure on the gender. Because I think there's let's just say it. I feel there's a definite connection to Silver St. Cloud.
Yeah, I was thinking that was Silver. I was thinking that is Silver.
Yeah, I'm thinking either it is Silver or Silver's backing the person.
Right.
It's one or the other. Bruce has many flashbacks to his time with Robin, and I love this, especially when Robin left to join the Titans and reminds him that he needs others and shouldn't consider those relationships a liability. I adore this because it really gets to the core that while Batman is incredibly well-trained, interpersonal relationships are awkward for him when he's not pretending to be the playboy. I think this is part of the reason he keeps people from getting too close. Not only does he think he is keeping them safe, but I also feel that Bruce has a fear that he can't be happy or that he can't allow himself happiness because it will betray his mission. When he's with Silver, we see some fantastic moments with Aquaman. It shows the long friendship and how Bruce is letting the hair down, which shock Arthur into thinking the reactions were just a man in danger. And I loved the bits with the screams that the sea life heard from Bruce, and Silver thinking that it meant he was in danger because of... It was just too funny, because it's so, in their eyes, so out of character of him. The book does have some great tongue-in-cheek humor that fits Batman without losing the proper tone.
I took it, actually, I loved the little tongue-in-cheek humor, because we do see Bruce crack a joke in the cowl. It's showing that he's changing as a person because of his relationship. I ate that up, that once he started seeing him, first he did a couple jokes outside of the cowl, showing it, but once he did that one joke inside the cowl, I was like, oh yeah, this is a cool moment. Bruce is starting to let go of some of the darkness, and that's why I always get very terrified when Bruce lets go some of his darkness. I'm like, oh no, are they going to do some massive, terrible thing? And because I'm thinking, okay, Silver is Goat, the Goat's going to get killed, and we'll have another no kind of moment. I'm like,
yeah, I don't want to see Silver
I don't
die.
want to see that, and I don't even want to see her. It's funny. I wish we could see Bruce continue on in a positive. A positive relationship. Have him actually deal with somebody who can deal with Batman and deal with Bruce Wayne, who could, bridge both worlds. And I like seeing Silver because she's kind of doing that.
The whole art team has got to be commended on this book because it goes through a different changes where you've got Bruce during the day in bright, exotic places where the tone is very upbeat. Yet we don't lose Bruce there. He's got these wonderful scars going on, and there is still Batman there, and there's a romance that's tragic because it just feels tragic. Yet the atmosphere and mood is not lost. Like they are somewhere exotic that we would all want a vacation at, but then it zooms right back into dark, moody Gotham. And this man finding a new way to deal with his dark, moody world, trying to find a balance that we all know he can't keep up.
Yeah, it's going to crash down. And that's just, what's going to happen to cause it to crash down?
Yeah.
I really, really, really hope it's not a villain turn for Goat Dude. Mm-hmm. I hope, because I kind of get the feel, like the vibe that he's a Bat fan. Maybe if he's not Silver, he's backed by Silver, but the person that Silver found was a Bat fan. So I'd hate to see him turn. That's why I'm leaning towards, probably Goat Dude getting killed by somebody.
Or it being Silver.
Or it being Silver. One of the two. I don't know. Which could cause issues for Batman to have her in that situation. I don't know.
And ultimately, can she keep it up?
Right.
It's interesting, though, to just see the duality of those worlds. And is this her way to somehow connect with him? And I don't know. And I mean, we're obviously putting a lot of faith in our speculation at the moment. But I love this book, though. The atmosphere and tone shifts. It's got to be really hard to shift between these bright, exotic locations and back into dark Gotham and keep that foreboding tone and mood throughout, because Batman's still put in some very dire situations where the Goat has to come in and save the day.
Yeah, the Goat saved him twice.
Yeah. So obviously the Goat seems to be trailing Bruce more than doing his own thing, which is another reason why I'm taking that the person is linked with Silver is Silver. So I don't know. If the action's intense, great character drama that gets to the root of Bruce's strengths and insecurities. I love the human aspect of this character, and it really captures this. 2 and 3 were really the issues for me, where it really started to work and come together. I enjoyed issue 1, but I found it to be an enjoyable read. It looked great. It was an enjoyable read, but it didn't have the pop that 2 and 3 had.
Here's the thing with me. I read issue 1. Mm-hmm. I didn't read 2 or 3 until you were saying, hey, why don't we talk about it? And so I went back and then read 2 and 3 together. Yeah,
because I read 2 and 3, and that's what I called you up and said, I'd love to talk about this on the show, because 2 and 3 really just, woof.
Yeah, 1 didn't have enough to really make me want to get it. I knew I'd enjoy it because I do like Kevin Smith's writing. Mm-hmm. But it was just, with everything going on, I didn't read it until...
One was a nice prologue issue.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with a prologue, this minor problem with a prologue issue is you haven't gotten into the meat and potatoes yet. And you can't have 2 and 3 without 1, but it really was 2 and 3. It was woof.
Yeah.
And just gorgeous artwork. The cover was stunning on issue 3 with Silver there and then Bruce there, and just seeing how out of sorts he looks in her world. In that bright daytime world, how Batman just does not fit there. Just such a great foreboding cover to the whole thing, and I love it. It's a great series. My understanding with how this is going to work is, and I'm hoping this is still going to stand, they're doing 6 issues first, then there's going to be a slight break, and then there's a second 6 issues. Kind of like what we got with the Mad Monk.
Yeah.
That whole thing where there was those 2 6-issue cycles, and that was one big... Monster Man. Monster Man was the other one. I'm hoping that's the way it works, and we get there. And this is kind of Kevin Smith's, Walter Flanagan's. Our friend colorist Art Lyon is doing the colors on this. It's a good looking book.
Yes, this is definitely a nice looking. Pick it up and read. It's worth it.
Yeah, it's a good one. Bat fans, if you're not getting this one,
this is a great Bruce Wayne Batman story. So that's one of the things I really liked about it, was the fact that we were getting that.
You know what I like, too? Because I've always liked Kevin Smith's writing in comics. I think what was lost a lot of times is because he got this reputation of just having delays and stuff like that. I think people forget that he tells great comic book stories.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I like the fact that DC took a look at that his scheduling difficulties at times, because he guy's working in film and that's his career, that's his priorities and that type of thing. I respect that. But they want to use that talent. A miniseries is a great way to do it. And set it up in such a way that, hey, when enough issues are in the can, let's publish this thing and put it out. And, so, more Kevin Smith. I want to see more of this stuff. I like it. Yay.
There they are, all alone except for that old character.
One of our listeners sent us an interesting email, and I wanted to read it to you right now. It was from our episode where we were chatting about Doom Patrol. And he wanted to remind us that Doom Patrol preceded the X-Men. I've read comics since 1958, and remember Doom Patrol being so different than most comics when Stan and Jack came out with the X-Men. It seemed like a complete ripoff. Wheelchair Leader, Freaks and Mutants. I love your show and listen to every episode. I wish you'd let fans know the truth about the above. I've read most everything over 50 years, and I know things. Apologize to Peter David. And he didn't leave his name, but I just wanted to say that we weren't trying to imply when we compared it to the X-Men that Doom Patrol or X-Men came first. That wasn't the whole point of the conversation. We were using X-Men as a reference point because the honest truth is I'm an X-Men fan. I grew up reading X-Men. X-Men was more popular, and it has become through the media and all that. So we were using it as a reference point for people who haven't read Doom Patrol before to try and say, if you're an X-Men fan who is listening to our show, because I'm well aware, I read comics outside of DC. I read lots of comics, Marvel, DC, Independence. I'm a fan of comics in general, that more likely than not, listeners who are listening to our show are familiar with the X-Men, but might not be familiar with Doom Patrol, so we were trying to come up with a common reference point. And that's where Myron brought up the X-Men initially, and that it gave him that feel. It wasn't an implication that they were a ripoff or anything like that. Doom Patrol is definitely their own flavor, and we did say that in the review, so I want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. He's 100% correct. Doom Patrol did come first. It is something that, and it wasn't the point to say that either one ripped off the other, because I don't know how that all came about anyway, and that's not the point of the conversation. But I do feel that X-Men fans who are currently reading X-Men who've never touched Doom Patrol before can find something real familiar in Doom Patrol, something they're comfortable with and something that's edgy. It's not a cookie-cutter thing with the X-Men, but there is something, if you like that kind of storytelling, it's a great way to get some cool X-Men-styled storytelling in there. So that was the whole point of that discussion, and I apologize if we made it seem anyway like we were saying that the Doom Patrol is a rip-off the X-Men. That was the farthest thing from the truth. We just thought it was kind of cool that there was a similar feel. I want to remind you guys that sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Remember, you can pick up Great 10, issue 3 of 10. Regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79. I'm really enjoying that miniseries, so just wanted to shout it out. Also at InStockTrades.com, show favorite Gail Simone, Birds of Prey, Between Dark and Dawn trade paperback. Collecting issues 69 to 75 of this great series, 176 pages, regularly $14.99, 37% off, only $9.44. Definitely check out Birds of Prey if you've never read it before, because Gail Simone just plain out rocks. Thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Jim, our next episode, we are going to be doing all speeding bullet style. I mean, we might get meaty on a bunch of the topics that we talk about, but our goal there is just going to be kind of take a look at the Superman books, the Batman books, Wonder Woman, just things that aren't Blackest Night that are going on right now. Secret Six.
Maybe some Titans talk.
Titans,
there's a lot
JSA.
of stuff going on.
I want to talk a lot JSA.
Big time.
Because that JSA versus Cobra also came to an end. I want to talk about the rift that's growing in the JSA books. So some of the topics we haven't been able to talk about. I don't know if it's... I'm personally thinking it's going to be the next 2 episodes, because I think we've just got way too much to talk about. And I do want to get into all those things before we go into our next Preacher show, because I'd like to do those 2, another Preacher show, and then do our Blackest Night episode. So I'd like to do a couple episodes where we take a look at the rest of the DCU, because the Superman books and stuff I want to.
There's some great stuff
Batman,
going on.
Wonder Woman. Ooh, Wonder Woman's got big events going on.
Yeah.
This I haven't had a chance to read. We get our books mailed to us, and we aren't getting our books till Monday.
Yeah,
so the only one that we kind of jumped ahead and grabbed was it's due to the holiday.
Yeah.
Pesky holidays.
Come on.
Yeah. I'm really anxious to read a lot of the books that are in our package this week, so I'm really excited. I think a new Wonder Woman is in there. I think it's the new one because the way she was left in quite a cliffhanger. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about Wonder Woman and Secret Six and all that fun stuff. So we got a whole bunch to chat about over the next couple weeks. So I think we might as well just say it's going to be 2 more episodes then, pretty sure.
Yeah.
Just way too much topics. But anyway, we will see you. Oh, wait, one other thing I want to talk about, Jim, because you didn't have a chance to respond to this. I mentioned on our last episode that we send out our condolences to DC Noise and any of the listeners over there for Eric Martin's death. And I know you met Eric as well at the Mid-Ohio Con, and I just wanted to give you a chance to be able to just kind of say something, because I just realized I said something at the beginning and the end of the last episode, but you didn't have a chance.
Well, thank you. Because I tell you, it's, I met him once, really, and, heard from, used to listen to DC Noise a lot, and, got to, it's even that limited experience I had, you could tell this was one of those cool guys. This is one of those guys that, I'm
Tongue-tied to them all.
I'm getting a little emotional. It's tough. It's because it's hard to say, like, wow, he's gone. And it's, and I sit here and I didn't have as long a knowledge and didn't have as much, dealings and interactions with him. And in that short period, I knew this was a good guy. This was a guy that, you could be long-term friends with. You could sit there and you can hang with him and just, be comfortable and just be who you are around
He was
him.
the question on the forums.
Yeah.
So I knew him a lot more from the forums, obviously, than we did personally as far as meeting him. And just a wonderful fella.
Yeah.
So
It's really sad, and just, those who really knew him are going to miss him, but you still remember some of the great stuff and just have those fond memories of time.
I'm glad we got to meet him in person.
Yeah.
Because it was a lot. It's hard for me sometimes to put the face of the person along with their forum name, because I do know a majority of the people that we meet at conventions from forum discussions, and I've known him since well before he was podcasting. From what he was doing up on the forums, and then I got the pleasure of getting to know him more through the podcasts that he did, because there's multiple podcasts he was involved in. And DC Noise, of course, and it's just a great guy, and it was just a cool. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to say something about it, just because it's obviously a lot of our listeners we share between both shows.
Yeah.
And my condolences to anyone.
Thoughts and prayers, and just it's you sit in these situations and you wish you could think of that one thing that'll make the pain go away, and it won't, just because. This is, it's a tragedy. And
so I just wanted to acknowledge it. And my thoughts go out to Jamie D., who from Comic Geek Speak, hasn't been doing so well lately. So I know from what I've read on their forums, it seems like he's on the mend. But Jamie D's a good friend of the show, and just somebody I wanted to give a quick shout out for as well. So hopefully some good news coming over the next couple weeks. More good news, I should say, about Jamie D as well. So, anyway, we will see you next week with more Comic Chat, and
bye.